Hello, everyone. So, my name is Grace Yang, and I am the former president of the Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation's Youth Leadership Committee. And I am very, very pleased to welcome you to our first seminar of day 2 of our Inspiring Role Models Conference. So, I apologize for the slight delay in starting the seminar today. We had some technical issues, but we're all good now. We're going to get started. So this seminar that we are going to be hearing very, very soon is titled The Business of Being a Writer. So this IRM conference is hosted by the Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation, otherwise known as MYE, and we are a 501c3 dedicated to promoting STEM education and supporting K through 12 students so they can thrive in the new technological world. And you can check out our other seminars at the link on screen, www.myebeat.com/IRM-event-. I believe that link will be put into our Zoom and YouTube live chat shortly, so you can go check out our full schedule there. And also the rest of our website at www.myebeat.com. That's MYEBEAT.com. So additionally, before we get started, we would also like to give a quick shout out to our partners and sponsors, because none of these events would be possible without them. Their work has truly allowed this conference to prosper and make an even greater positive impact on the world. So with that said, we're very, very honored to host this seminar with Delara Sumbul as our guest. Today, we're going to be exploring the world of writing and what steps to take if you are interested in becoming a writer and really actualizing that dream or journey. So if you have any questions while Delara is speaking, feel free to send those questions in the Q&A function here on Zoom. So that would be on the bottom bar next to the chat function. Please send your questions in the Q&A there. Or if you are watching from YouTube Live, you can drop your questions in the chat and they will get to me and Delara, obviously. So keep that in mind as she is presenting, and we will be able to answer all your questions at the end shortly. And also remember to stay until the end of our seminar to enter a raffle that we are hosting. We will be giving away JBL Bluetooth headphones, and stick around for that because every single seminar you attend gives you another chance to win headphones. So let me get started by giving a brief introduction of our guest speaker. So Delara Sumbul is a fiction writer from San Francisco. So she writes mainly experimental fiction and magical realism and has been published numerous times since she was only 11 years old. Imagine that. What were you doing at 11 years old? So she's an editor at Dear Asian Youth, where she works with a cohort of writers to put forth work that reflects marginalized young Asian voices, specifically Asian voices that may not be from the conventional, East Asia or South Asia. And she also serves as the director of communications at the Empowerment Collective, where she leads a team of op-ed and press release writers to push for equitable policy that properly addresses the needs of marginalized people. She additionally works as a prose reader at the Farside Review. There, she votes on fiction and creative nonfiction pieces submitted for publication, as well as contributes to columns. Delara belongs to the Emerging Writers Institute at Stanford University and was the student speaker for her term at the School of the New York Times. Her work can be found at places such as the Farside Review, the Blue Fire Journal, and the Black Sea Zine. So now Delara is going to go ahead and tell us all about the business of being a writer.
Hello, everyone. Like Grace said, I'm Delara. I just realized my bio introduces me, so I I had a bit introducing me. That's okay. This is the business of being a writer, and my name's Delara. So I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of a forthcoming magazine. I'm an editor for communications at Dear Asian Youth. I'm a review staff writer and prose reader at the Far Side Review, and deputy director of media, co-director of communications, and a studio assistant to Sun Young Shin, who's a fantastic poet. So for my personal background, I'm from San Francisco, but I now live in Berkeley. And I grew up in the Mission District. I've been writing for about 8 years, and I've been published for 6. So it's been nearly a decade. And I'm on to my second book now. This is the page count for my first book, which is not getting published, by the way, but it still happened, so that's nice. I'm writing my second one now with the help of some of these authors here. The authors I've been most recently mentored by, Kaming Chang. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's very early here. Angie Sijun Lu, Sun Young Shin. So they are absolutely phenomenal, and being able to do this has given me so many opportunities with so many wonderful writers. And for this talk specifically, I wanted to start off by talking about a really huge issue with a lot of young writers my age, and how they work towards being a writer in the future, which is the young writers complex, which is essentially pairing a passion for writing with college apps and sort of having this obsession for contests. Now, the most notable contests for these is the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, the Young Arts competition, and lesser, but still there, the Adroit prizes for poetry and prose. Now, the issue with these is that they are designed solely with rankings in mind. And furthermore, they end up burning out writers really fast because their goal is to be one. That is it. They do not provide any further platform for you. They are a mark on a resume, and they end up just giving you nowhere to go afterwards because they don't strive to build a community or anything. They strive to give out awards, right? And I know personally, I know that a lot of writers I know talk about how many people have plagiarized to get those awards. So really, the push for competition has increased the desperation and what people will go to for these competitions. So, and like I said, there's a lack of momentum. And more specifically, for a lot of writers of color, I know I'm talking to, probably a lot of people of color in the audience. There's a huge amount of identity exploitation. Most notably, people who come from immigrants are pushed to sort of exploit their own families. And I think you guys have probably seen that writing, where they talk about their grandma's worst experiences in her life, right? For a prize. It's sort of, these stories are distinct in the way that they are so identical to each other, which means that these families all sort of blend together because they are another product. And that's really what these contests do. I'm sorry, I don't mean to totally hate them. It's just that, if you want to apply to them, yeah, go for it. I mean, they're good opportunities. At the same time, don't gear towards them, if that makes sense, is what I'd recommend personally. And then, this whole talk is hopefully going to give you an idea of what you can do instead to really build for longevity, to do what you love. Now, what I'd start with is really creating a portfolio as much as you can. I'd say this is a perfect time to work on pieces that interest you and experiment with different styles and structures as you get started. Just anything that catches your eye or that you want to spend even a day with, at the least, to be able to look for the work you want to do, right? Anything that interests you, anything that catches your attention over and over and over again. I think that's really important to be looking towards. And then what you want to read becomes what you want to write. And what I mean by that is don't pick a genre because you think it's more impressive. Pick a genre because you love it. If you pick literary fiction, which I mean doesn't even exist, it's everything's literary. But if you pick literary fiction, even though you hate literary fiction or you don't read literary fiction, you want to seem more impressive, you're going to end up with a portfolio of things that you hate. So I think it's really important to keep in mind comics, sci-fi, romance, these are all just as good. And concepts and ideas that interest you are what's most important to go towards. Like, as I wrote, authors who find what they love to write and commit to it fully are very distinct in their work and are often successful. Like, for example, Taylor Jenkins Reid, she's known for her books on fame and its effects and the people behind it, how they sort of put themselves forth in the world and how it all falls apart for them. And people consistently read her books because that's what she writes about and that's what she loves to write about. And Madeline Miller, she retells mythology and in a modern way, and it's very, very beautiful. And so people consistently read her works as well. And Sally Rooney, she's very interested in contemporary relationships and the dynamics between that and sort of communication or lack of communication. And so really all of these authors, of course, finding what you love to write won't guarantee you success. But the reason that they're so distinct as authors today is because they know what they love to write and they write it often. And so what I'd recommend for exploration, this is a sort of an aside. This is just me having fun because this is supposed to be about the business of being a writer, but it's fine. I'd really recommend going into or trying prose poetry or any form of fragmented sort of vignettes in a story or circular forms in writing. And please feel free to look those up if you haven't heard those terms before, because it really helps your understanding about how details and preciseness in your sentences sort of helps a piece, and also how you can draw resonance from purposeful gaps. And then I'd also recommend working outside of Western canon. And what I mean specifically by that is the Greek plot structure, which always, always, always needs conflict. It's the graph you've probably seen in English class or over and over again. It goes up and then it goes down because there's conflict resolution. That is the point of it. And there are so many different forms. There's one written down there in which conflict doesn't happen. It doesn't have to happen, which is really, really important, I think, for a lot of young writers to see. And I think the best example of non-Western plot that a lot of you probably know are Studio Ghibli films, which are very well loved, and they're a very distinct, different kind of story. So I think exploring different non-Western forms of storytelling helps enable yourself to reintroduce to plot and envision new ways for stories to unfold, if that makes sense. I would really, really recommend that. And then also on that note, writing new folklore and myths or expanding on real ones sort of enables you to understand the lineage in literature, which is very, very important. Lineage and how we build on each other and how we recreate and add in elements of different times. It really helps connect and bridge gaps between different works and helps sort of what you're writing become part of what is around you as well, which I think is very important. And then just overall for this period, I would recommend learning the rules before you break them. That sounds very stereotypical, but let me explain. It's like there are going to be tons of writers who are exceptions to the rule, and you probably love them. You probably love their work, and so you don't understand why it's a rule. But if they are successfully subverting it, they chose to, and they know how to do it successfully, and that's why they're a good writer. And if you don't know what you're subverting, you're not subverting it, you're just sort of flailing around, is what I tell you. So I just learn the rules. You don't have to take them too seriously, but learn how to write like that first. And then I'd recommend really using writing as many other mediums as interests you. Really anything that you love or want to work on as well, if you're not just a writer, even filmmaking, if you want to switch to screenwriting, or you want to write cartoons or make zines with art in them as well. Which on that note, before publishing a debut novel is a lot of work, and I know I'm skipping ahead here, but before a debut novel, I would really recommend trying chapbooks, novellas, zines, online collections, anthologies, anything that's not a debut novel, so you can sort of control that and control your experimentation. And I mean, if that's confusing to you guys, I can explain later, but that's just something that a debut novel is so much work. I can't explain. Most people avoid it for years. So anyway, short aside. Also, I do want to say you'll write bad things before you write good things at this point in time, probably. But that is what builds the foundation for your good work. So anything you write is still good work, even if it's awful, even if you dislike it. It is, well, not in the writing sense, objectively good work, but because you're doing it, it's good work because you need to. And then overall for next steps, I think once you've reached that point, you've been experimenting, you sort of know what you love to write, definitely be writing daily, building up skills and generating more projects you care about. So again, back to the portfolio, sort of building that up. I think this is also an important time to start contributing to journals. So pushing forth an external portfolio and sort of helping people recognize your name. The more you come up, or the more, even if you're politely rejected over and over and over again, you're going to come up and people are going to start recognizing your name. And I mean, even if they think you're a horrible writer, if you are polite to other people, if you don't do things like send horrible, angry emails after a rejection, which happens way too often, you will build up a good reputation. It doesn't matter what your writing is like. So just keep in mind conduct, be nice to others. And yeah, this is also a time to publish more experimental works to see what sticks again and what you're really interested in. And, this is probably a time where people aren't looking at your work as much. So if you want to take any risks, this is a good time to do that. And then also, I'd really, really recommend working as a writer with the publications themselves. And so there are three sort of basic options, the biggest option possible in order of seniority. First off is being a reader. Now you can be a reader for prose or poetry or creative nonfiction. Creative nonfiction is more rare, but you can. Usually, I think as a prose reader, I also read creative nonfiction, so there's some overlap. But in this job, you're the first person to vote on pieces that a publication gets, and you sort of get to read through this entire catalog, give your reasoning, and work with editors to approve pieces into the publication. So it's a really important job for a magazine because it's sort of, you're getting the slush pile, but it's really important. It gives you a sense of perspective, and it also makes you a lot more comfortable with rejection overall because, I think when I started out, I felt like rejecting people was so mean because I was coming from the perspective of a writer. But the more I did it, especially now, it's just like I'll reject someone for like any minor infraction, and that sounds really bad. But a literary magazine is going to want very, very specific things, and it's all subjective. I am not necessarily a good judge of great literature. I'm just a teenager judging your works, right? So when you're rejected, it becomes much less personal and more like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then there's also the opportunity to become a staff writer. So this means you could potentially write about yourself, you could write literary criticism, reviews, or you could publish stories, poems, or essays once a publishing cycle. And this position is very work intensive. I think it's the most work out of any of them, honestly. Being an editor is higher up, but it's a lot easier than when I was a staff writer, and I still am one. But if you're good at deadlines and producing a lot of work, or if you want to get good at that and you have time to start working on more pieces and building up more of your portfolio, I would recommend this job because it also helps your publication credits so much. It's insane. And then there's also being an editor. So this means you would work with writers and sort of, you could front edit, which means you shape the pieces to start with, or you could also edit afterwards, which is more typical. And that means, well, you guys know what editing is if you've ever helped a friend with an essay, right? But with stories and poems, it gets more specific because you have to really try and get at what the writer is trying to do and sort of find the spine of a piece and go from there. And you're really able to shape the portfolio of a publication, which means you have a huge role, which is really fun, actually. And I think this is best at working with, it'll help you with working with other writers and making connections. The connections you'll get from this are so, so important. Starting a magazine, I couldn't have if I didn't know people because of my jobs, because that was how I got people to apply, and that was how I got people to trust me and apply, or like working with me and then join the magazine, right? So it's really important actually to engage with other writers not in competition, which I think is something I'll try and emphasize more. Competition will not help you at all at this stage or any stage. But yeah, in order to join publications, hopefully you already have some you like. If not, well, they're not hiring, but the Adroit Journal, my magazine, actually, if you want to apply, it's on my website. You can check the Join Us pages. You can check to see if they have them. There's often a Google form to fill out. And these Google form applications will often ask for your experience. If you don't have any, that is fine. Maybe just don't apply for editor to start with. They might ask for a couple of your pieces, how many hours you can put in, what's your background. Though that's a little sketchy, and sometimes that doesn't happen. And I think it will also ask for what your interest in this specific publication is. Though, of course, the questions all switch around and it's not regulated at all. And I do want to emphasize, don't be reluctant to apply because you won't have experience until you have experience. When I started out as an editor, I had never worked as an editor before. And what happened was I was kind of confused for a day or two, and then I was qualified. So doing it is also a way to get experience, and you have to trust that you can learn and that you are capable of learning as a writer. And also trust that other people are there to help you. You can ask for help, and none of us are going to judge you, or at least I don't think any of us are going to judge you. It's more, again, this is why I don't emphasize competition, because working with other writers to put something forth together, it makes the experience much, much better with your peers overall. And then also, this is sort of an extra step, but I thought I'd just sort of put it in here because it was really helpful for me. I would recommend building a website if you're very serious about writing. It's sort of an industry standard now, and it can help you build an audience. It can help you with agents. Recruiters can find you that way. You can get job offers that way, and people can request interviews from you that way as well, which is how some of my interviews happen, which is very nice. And so really, it is an industry standard, which means it's acceptable for a website to be free or for it to say Wix site. So don't worry about that too much. You can do Wix, WordPress, Ucraft, anything free. Yeah, so this is a screenshot of my website. And what I'd really recommend is putting in publications, reviews you've gotten, your bio, your current positions, and your contact information. I think those are really key. A lot of other things are extra, but of course, if you're not the same type of writer as me, you're going to really have to think about what is relevant to your work that you need to put in there, because really this is sort of a portfolio, and it's what other people can see. And if people Google your name, this is what they're going to see for you as a writer. So be careful on this, but also it's really important if you genuinely, like, seriously want to be a writer and want to keep this around for a long time. And then I think overall, building up a portfolio, experimenting first, writing daily and writing things that interest you, contributing to journals, building up a publication. Then 3 options: reading for submissions, writing for places, being an editor. And what I really emphasize again, success in this involves not competing with others. If you end up competing with others, you're not going to put yourself in a good position to be a writer with other people. And you need other people to be a writer. It's mostly an individual activity, but in order to put it forward in the world, you need like so many other people. So don't burn your bridges and don't be competitive. No one is capable of writing the same thing as someone else. So it's not worth it to compete, really. You can be objectively better than someone else, but you couldn't have written their work anyway. And I think competition enables lack of community and connections. But also, more importantly, as a writer, we need to read and we need to love literature. More great writers around you means that you get to read more great literature. And as a writer, that's really what we should seek to do. Anyway, thank you so much. I am here for every question. So, Grace.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and put my screen back up. But so yeah, now we are going to be taking questions. They've been piling up in the Q&A box so far. So one of the questions I've seen multiple times at this point is, where do you get your inspiration to write?
That's an interesting question. I am really interested by different concepts and sort of ways of writing, and characters come from that. Like, for example, the idea of time being thin, or the idea that I get to write about different versions of someone's life, like anything that is sort of slightly out of the ordinary, and I get to play around with form. That's always sort of what I return to. And then I'm very interested in places and the atmosphere of places. So I really like, thinking about all these different settings, putting them in and seeing what comes from that. So.
And then this question's more about like your editing work, and also your prose reading work. But so what's your favorite part about reading other people's stories?
I think my favorite part is being surprised, because editing, you sit down and you're not really looking to be moved. You're looking to sort of change someone's work or find what's wrong with it. So moments in which I just sit back and I'm like, oh, wow, that's fantastic. That is definitely the best part, because, I know we're putting that out there, and, it's great to be able to work with someone who could write that.
That's really great. So, another question, who are some writers that you look up to a lot?
Pablo Neruda, Stephen King. His work in genre is fantastic. Maybe not how he writes women. I really love Rumi, Hafiz, Anthony Doerr, and then also Ursula Le Guin. And yeah, I mean, that's all I can think of right now, but I have so many.
So, another question. So, how did you figure out what your favorite genre was? And also, have you tried experimenting with other genres?
Yeah, so I think I started out with fantasy because as a child, I just loved fantasy so much. But I ended up branching off to like sort of speculative and magical realism, and I did explore a lot. I actually went so far as to write horror for a bit. I don't know, it just vaguely interested me. But I did experiment a lot, and I think it's helped because, you sort of venture out to where you're not used to writing, and you can sort of bring elements home to where you actually like to write. So there's a lot of different elements from genres in my work, but I don't necessarily write those genres.
So, could you, by any chance, elaborate on what you meant by, I think it was speculative fiction and magical realism, just for audience members who are maybe not super familiar with those terms?
Yeah, sure. So magical realism is a genre that mostly started in Latin America, I believe, in which, God, I wanna give people the right definition here. Hang on. I
Maybe,
want to
maybe
check.
like some examples.
Yes. So um Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and then Toni Morrison, Isabel Allende. I think those are all really fantastic authors to check out if you're interested in magical realism, because magical realism is more of just elements of elements of the mystical or the unexplained in daily life, and how that sort of exacerbates themes and character development and all that great stuff.
Okay, so another question. How do you personally deal with writer's block?
Writer's block. I think it's good to take a break because it may be you're pushing yourself too much, but at the same time, writer's block only exists when your parameters are too large. Like if you pick out something very, very specific to write about, people, even if you're writing something awful, you're still writing it, so you're not blocked, right? And so there's this saying, you have to turn the faucet on. So you have to keep writing, even if it's completely awful and you have writer's block, is what I'd say.
Great. So I think we got time for maybe one or two more questions. So I've got one right here. How do you motivate a child's interest for writing, specifically for like elementary school age children?
I think the best thing to do is just get them books, any book they want. And I think what made it fun for me was, it was this idea of being, sort of an artist and making together an actual book. Just all of those things. It was put forth to me as a fun project to do. And books were already something I loved, and I just read books constantly. So I think that, if an elementary schooler asks for any book at all, give it to them.
Great. So, someone's asking if you can't find a good end to a story, perhaps, how do you deal with that? Like trying to find a fitting ending.
Oh, I've actually never had this problem. The thing is, I'm very bad at beginnings, but very good at endings. So I don't know if I can help you, but I think I usually bring it back to like a small detail or something picked out in the middle, very specific, that sort of leaves resonance, if that makes sense. Like something that the reader has to think about for a second.
Like some type of catharsis almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we got another one. So someone's asking if you had to describe your writing style in one word, what would it be?
Oh no. These are very good questions, by the way. I appreciate the audience. Hopefully light. Light. I'd say light. Also, for the people who were asking about contact information, I'm putting my website there and it has my contact information on it. I don't know if people on YouTube can see
We'll
that,
we'll
right?
get that
Okay.
pasted into the YouTube chat. Don't worry about that.
Okay,
Yep,
great.
so there's her website in our chat. And then someone's asking, what's a writing piece that you are most proud of?
That I'm most proud of? Hmm. I think it's a forthcoming poem because I never write poetry called Step Classics. And it's about how we sort of recreate literature of the people that we love over and over and over. I thought, I don't usually write poetry, much less good poetry. So I like that one a lot.
Okay, so we have a yeah, we got a couple more. Okay, so we got a couple fun ones. So, what's your favorite Studio Ghibli film? Because you mentioned that earlier.
I don't know. Oh my God, Howl's Moving Castle, I'd say.
Very nice. Yeah, definitely enjoy that one. So, and then someone's asking, so do you like music? And if so, do you think the music that you like has influenced your writing?
Oh, absolutely. What an interesting question. Yeah, I'd say the way that we think about well, it affects your subconscious. And specifically, like what are people singing about over and over and over again, right? Like I listened to the Beatles a lot, and then I was so interested in the time they lived in and how fame affected them. So maybe not in the way you're asking, but I often think about like the stories behind songs. Like for example, I think Taylor Jenkins Reid's book, Daisy Jones and the Six, was inspired by a lot of what happened to Fleetwood Mac and a lot of their music. And so, yeah, I do tend to think about what the artist is trying to say a lot. I don't have any direct examples for me, but I keep an eye out for music, certainly.
And then let's see, um let's just take a couple more. So what's your absolute like number one favorite author slash book?
Absolute? Oh no,
Or
I
like the
don't
top
have it
number one right now?
right now. Okay, I don't. Right now, my favorite book is Paul Auster's 4321 because it's just a masterpiece. And I don't, I'll say maybe Anthony Doerr for favorite author right now.
Okay, great. So that's all we have time for today. And thank you so much for talking to us. That was really, really insightful. So if you look at my screen right now, let me just take a second to reshare. Let me just stop presenting and refresh. Okay, great. So what I am pulling up on my screen right now is our raffle QR code. So we mentioned earlier that there will be a raffle at the end for you guys to enter. So here it is. So be sure to scan the QR code on the right to enter our raffle. I believe our volunteers will also be putting the link in the chat. So be sure to enter that raffle. I will give you guys a few minutes to do that. And then Delora will be helping us to pick a winner who will be announced at our closing ceremony later today. So once again, this raffle is for a pair of JBL Bluetooth headphones. They're pretty cool. So make sure you get that done. And we will be waiting a few minutes for you guys to do that. Okay, you guys have another minute or two to go ahead and enter that raffle. All right, last call for raffle entries. So right now I'm gonna have Delara go ahead and pick a winner. So she's gonna let me know what number that is. Okay, so we have our winner now. So what you guys will have to do is stick around to our closing ceremony and our winner will be revealed. And once again, that's it for the raffle. Make sure to stick around for the closing ceremony to see if you are our lucky winner. Our next seminar will be on solar, software, and robots, an unexpected STEM journey, and that will be at 1 p.m. So just following this one. Be sure to stick around for that. Thank you all for coming today, and we really hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Be sure to thank Delara for sharing her journey today. It's a really fantastic presentation. So once again, thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful rest of your day. This was really very fantastic and enjoyable.
Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa Lee,
And I am Troy Shen.
and we're members of the Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation's Youth Leadership Committee. We're excited to welcome everyone to our second event of today, Entrepreneurship and Innovation in STEM, from the Inspiring Role Models Conference. The IRM conference is hosted by the Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to promoting STEM education and supporting K-12 students so that they can thrive in the new technological world. You can check out our other seminars at myebeat.com/event and our website at myebeat.com. Additionally, we'd like to give a quick shout out to our partners and sponsors, for none of these events would be possible without them. Their work has truly allowed this conference to prosper and make an even greater impact on the world. We're very honored to host this seminar with Eden Fo-Go as our guest. Today, we're going to be exploring entrepreneurship and innovation in STEM as Eden shares her experiences as a startup and nonprofit founder. If you have any questions while we speak, feel free to shoot them to the Q&A function here on Zoom. Remember to stay until the end of the seminar to enter a raffle that we're hosting. And let's get started by giving a brief introduction of our guest speaker.
Eden Fo-Go is the founder and CEO of Mobot, a mobile app testing solution powered by human-supervised mechanical robots. Mobot's 17-person team is backed by primary venture partners, New York Venture Partners, Blink Capital, RRE Ventures, and Y Combinator. Previously, Eden built products that spanned the energy, healthcare, and government sectors at Palantir Technologies and Butterfly Network. Before dropping out to accept the Thiel Fellowship, she studied mechanical engineering and computer science at Princeton University. She founded SunSaluter, a global nonprofit that has deployed an open source panel tracker design in 19 countries, impacting 17,000 people. The SunSaluter has been honored by the Forbes 30 Under 30, MIT Collab's Grand Prize, the Wesley Prize, Mashable/UN Founder Startups for Social Good Challenge, and the Postcode Lottery Green Challenge. And with that, it is our honor to welcome Eden with her talk, Solar, Software, and Robots, an Unexpected STEM Journey.
Thanks so much, Troy and Teresa. I really appreciate all of you guys and the hard work that it took to plan this conference, and thank you for having me. Alrighty, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you guys can't see it, and yeah, I will kick this off. So today I'm here to talk to you guys about sort of my very unconventional journey through STEM, which ranged from a lot of different childhood interests that I had in renewable energy, all the way to sort of my career pivot in working for a couple of software companies in New York, and then now founding my current company called Mobot, and we use actual robots, which kind of fuses all of my different interests together. So I started my journey in STEM when I was really young. You'll notice that the photo on the left is, I think I was about 9 or 10. It was my very first science fair. I had designed a solar-powered car that was very small, a desktop car, and that was basically it. Like, that was the project. I built this car and I got it to work. And I remember, so when I was 10, this was like, 20 years ago. So solar panels were this kind of new technology. It wasn't that popular back then, but it felt like magic to me that you could have this car that didn't have a power source, but when you stick it out in the sun, it would go from one end of the room to the other. And so in doing that, I think that really kind of helped me realize that you can actually build something from raw materials and engineer it and use scientific principles to run experiments, to learn, to actually solve real problems. And it was in that science fair project that I realized, there's actually more that could be studied with solar energy beyond just like this kind of hobby toy car that I made. What if I studied other ways to optimize solar energy? And so I did that in a bunch of different ways. The photo on the right is from when I was slightly older. So I think I was probably 15 or 16. And I was actually competing at the national and international science fairs. with my solar energy project, where I was essentially trying to find different ways to optimize solar energy collection. And some of that was through static arrangement of solar panels, but also rotating a solar panel to follow the sun. Because when you do that so that the sun is hitting the panel at a parallel angle or perpendicular angle all throughout the day, you will actually be able to increase your energy collection by 30 to 40%. And back then, solar panels were still really expensive. And so this was a very interesting finding that I stumbled upon, because for something that's so expensive, how can we get more juice out of it? And so for me, I did these science fair projects. I spent a few years tinkering with STEM, and I really thought that I knew what I was going to grow up to be. I was going to grow up and get an engineering degree and just like work in energy or something. As a kid, I played the violin growing up. I tried to get good grades, but then got distracted like every other kid, fell really in love with STEM. And I think that was really what I was most drawn to. And I was trying to navigate like the overwhelming number of career paths that existed. I think it was easy and the safe route for me to stick to STEM and stick with solar and energy and engineering. And that becomes more important later on. So I entered college and I declared mechanical engineering as my major. And partway through my sophomore year, I'd heard about this program called the Teal Fellowship. And the premise of the program was that you could drop out of college for 2 years and the Teal Foundation would give you $100,000, which is, if you think about it, 50 grand a year, which is maybe like an entry-level salary after college. But at the time, $100,000 over 2 years seemed like so much money. And they picked 24 of us to just take a pause from college or drop out of college and pursue our radical ideas. And so for me at the time, I basically only had this one idea. I felt like a one-trick pony, right? I knew how to build this solar tracker that rotated to optimize energy collection. I later went on to call it Sun Saluter, but this was kind of my first exposure to doing something outside of the box. I was kind of on this path freshman year, sophomore year, taking classes, and then I got this fellowship where I moved out to San Francisco. I met all these other students around my age, and there was no timetable. There was no one telling us what to do. And so I'll be honest with you, for the first few months, there was definitely a lot of finagling, figuring out what I wanted and how to make the most of my time. But where I eventually got to was I identified a few nonprofit partners that I could partner with to actually build out the Sun Saluter and deploy it in developing countries. And so this is an image from one of the deployments we did in Kenya. And so some of this was through connections that I'd had from college. I'd done an internship with a professor who then connected me with these nonprofits during my leave of absence. And so I was able to actually test out building the Sun Saluter in the field and then scaling it to other nonprofit organizations. And actually, for a couple of years during my fellowship, I ran a nonprofit where I hired other folks to teach workshops with me. We traveled to different places like Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, India, and worked with a lot of different nonprofits. And during this experience, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I really liked solving problems. I really liked meeting someone, having them explain what they were working on and then what they needed, and then working with them as partners to find a solution that was appropriate for their problem. What I realized I didn't like so much was traveling a lot. I got really homesick a lot, and in a job involving international development, there was a lot of travel, there was a lot of speaking at conferences at the time. There was a lot that I was still learning about myself as a young person and what I wanted out of my career. So eventually, after a few years of doing this, I realized that I didn't want to travel as much. A lot of my work with Sun Saluter ended up becoming very educational because I built the initial technology during my science fair projects, during my university years, and during the early part of my fellowship. So now a lot of it was spent talking to people, fundraising, convincing people to, donate more and create grants and work with Sun Saluter. And so it was a very people and social oriented job And that I ended up learning a lot, and I think it's really helped me be the person that I am today. But I also realized at the heart of everything, I really wanted to be working with technology to solve problems. And so that was what partially inspired my career change. The other thing that inspired my career change was I fell in love with my wife and moved to New York and got married, but that's the other part. So I thought about this to myself, we continued to run Sunsaluter for quite a while, but while I was doing that, I started thinking, what are other ways that I can continue to develop my career in STEM? I can continue to build technology to solve problems, but also be doing it closer to home and in other industries that were more broadly applicable than just solar and international development. And so when I moved to New York, I actually made a decision to really double down on some of the computer science that I learned in college and dive in deeper. So I actually enrolled in a programming boot camp. This was about 5 years ago, so it wasn't as proliferated as it is now. But the idea was that they would teach you how to build basic web applications. And I had taken, 3 or 4 CS classes in college and needed someone to kind of refresh my memory on how to write code, how to write scripts, but then also learning these modern web tools at the time, MongoDB, Express, Node, AngularJS, all of those have changed now in the past 5 years. Everyone uses React now. But these were all sort of names, libraries, tools related to software engineering that I, coming from the solar nonprofit world, I knew nothing about. And so instead of going back to college where I knew they weren't teaching these things, I decided what could I learn in 3 months that would help me get a job in an industry so I could figure out if I wanted to work in software and tech. And so I saw that there were common themes across engineering, across STEM that I wanted to stay close to, but I also wanted to build my career in a way that was more sustainable. And so a programming bootcamp seemed like the right decision at the time. And it ultimately ended up being the right call. But I will say it was really scary because for the last, 5 to 10 years of my life before this, in high school, in junior high, in college, at my Teal Fellowship, everyone knew me as the solar nonprofit girl. And so for everyone to all of a sudden realize that I was like going to move into software engineering, I definitely had a bit of a panic attack because I was like, are people going to think I'm a quitter? Are people going to think that, I don't know what I'm doing? Like, will I have any credibility moving into this new industry? And that was a big deal for me back then. I think it took a lot of just like tuning out other people and what other people thought of me and just focusing on myself. I knew what I wanted next in my career. I wanted more mobility. I wanted to grow. I wanted to learn what it was like in other industries, and I wanted to become a leader. And so for me, going into software engineering would open all these doors. And so I enrolled in this boot camp. I just shut out all the other noise. And then that was it. I ultimately learned how to build all these web applications. And that was a tremendous skill set that I continue to use today. And so more on that later. So after the boot camp, I did a whole bunch of interviews and I ended up getting a job at a company called Palantir Technologies, which today is now publicly traded. But at the time, they were sort of a fast-growing startup. And what they did was they built data analytics tools for a lot of other Fortune 500 companies. And so this is a random screenshot from a Palantir tool, but hopefully it gives you a sense of like, it's like your regular dashboard with a bunch of graphs on it. And Palantir built a lot of web applications. And so this was like my first foray into the software engineering industry. I'd taken some of the skills that I learned at the boot camp, and I helped Palantir deploy customized versions of these dashboards to different customers. And so I would fly to their offices. I would learn about, oh, what kinds of data are you looking to visualize? Okay, let me build you this dashboard that answers the questions you're looking to answer. And so Palantir had different clients across energy, healthcare, insurance, government. And so I got a lot of exposure to a lot of different kinds of companies. And I really saw that how easy it was to build web apps because the industry had already been around for 10 to 15 years, and it was very polished and very streamlined. And so one of the roles that really stood out for me at Palantir was this idea of product management. And that was something that I decided to get more into. And so when I picked a new job, so I stayed at Palantir for a couple of years, I decided I wanted more in-depth experience building one product rather than multiple products across different Palantir customers. And so I joined a company called Butterfly Network. And so they were really different. There was maybe one web app, but most of the application and the core use case was actually on a phone. It was mobile. So Butterfly Network builds a portable ultrasound probe that plugs into your iPhone or Android device. And then you can actually use it on the fly as an emergency room doctor to scan patients instead of having to wheel around this gigantic cart, which normally is kind of like the traditional solution you see in a lot of hospitals and clinics. And so I was really excited about this because this was now an extension of what I'd already been learning. I was building all these different products, but now I get to focus my time and really learn how to build one product really well. I get to go to hospitals and interview doctors and then learn about what they needed and then take that feedback and take it back to an engineer and be like, okay, we need to build a scan button on the bottom menu bar because doctors say that it's more convenient when they're holding the phone with one hand. You want to be able to touch something at the bottom of the screen. And so what I realized was that when you build a mobile application, it is a really different world than that graphical dashboard I showed you on the other page. The screen is much smaller. There are so many different iPhones, iOS, iPadOS, Android devices that you have to incorporate. And there's different behaviors on all of those different devices. And so in trying to build out this technology, I realized actually how different and how hard it was to build for mobile. And so this is where we'll get into Mobot, because you can sort of see how all of my different interests and all of my different paths at different companies are all converging into what I do today. And so what I was realizing was that as a product manager at Butterfly, I ended up having like all these different iPhones, iPads that I had to keep testing on. And the engineers were telling me that, hey, it's super important to do all these tests on all these real devices. When you run a simulator in the cloud, you're not actually getting accurate results that reflect the internet connection, the camera, the lighting sensor, the Bluetooth sensor, the location services, the push notifications that are available on that hardware device. And the reason behind this is because Samsung and Google actually implement very different versions of Android, and Apple is constantly changing iOS. They're constantly adding new features. You don't really get to actually control what Apple, Google, Samsung, Huawei, all these providers are building into their hardware platforms. But then as a software engineering team, our team at Butterfly had to do all this work to just make sure that our software was compatible on all these other people's platforms. And it was very, very stressful. And it ultimately ended up involving a lot of manual QA because there was no good way to automate it consistently across all these different devices. And so that was actually what inspired me to quit my job. I ended up doing so much manual QA that I was definitely just like losing my mind. I was like, why hasn't anyone figured out a way to solve this problem? If we know that emulators and automation in the traditional sense don't work for mobile like it does for web, why don't we try to find a way to automate QA physically? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the fundamental way that we as humans are using technology has evolved. It used to be like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you had your laptop, you had your desktop, you would click around in a browser with your mouse. And it was a very simple thing that you could kind of fake when you build tests for. But nowadays, there's multi-touch, force touch. You can, pan and pinch and zoom on a map. You can wait to use a push notification at the right time. You can scan your phone to check out, when you're paying for something. You can scan a QR code with your camera. Your smartwatch or your Fitbit has to connect to your phone and has to sync to Apple Health. And everywhere, the way that we use technology is evolving so that you're using it in the right time and place. It's more mobile, you're on the go. And so that means the testing process has to also evolve to accommodate the new way that people are using technology. And so I decided to use the skills that I built at the programming bootcamp, at Palantir, and at Butterfly, and the broader skills in engineering that I learned in product development, building SunSolutor. I decided to use all of that to build a prototype for what I wanted to scale as a company. So I built this little robot that would create a test report. So I was using very outdated web tools that I'd learned 5 years ago at the boot camp at the time. But I built this prototype that would essentially take my phone and tap on the screen and automate a series of steps and then record the test results and then actually deliver a test report to the customer. And so I pitched it to a bunch of different companies. This is me pitching at one of the early customers that we signed as Mobot. And I remember I quit my job for about 4 months and just like tinkered, built the prototype, and then got our first customer 4 months into me on this Mobot journey, and then decided to start applying for a couple of accelerator programs and got into Y Combinator Startup School, but then also the actual Y Combinator batch the following winter. And so Y Combinator was actually where I learned a lot about how to build a company. They teach you everything from fundraising to how to sell, to how to incorporate, to learning all of these different things, because I just knew how to make a robot and a thing and a web app. I didn't really know anything about the broader skills needed to actually found a company, hire, recruit, how like stock options work, how equity works, how your cap table works, and how investors and all that legal jargon. Like I learned a lot of that from reading online and attending Y Combinator. And so they have an interview process where you go in and you pitch your company. And so I brought in, the 2 customers that I had at the time. And, every week, basically, I would go to these sessions. They would be hosted in Mountain View. I think everything's been virtual since COVID. But it basically taught me a lot by learning and interviewing other founders that had gone through the same journey of like, in the early days, what were people focused on? Like, you don't need to be worried about marketing in the early days. You should be worried about identifying early customers yourself. And I learned lots of important skills around how to do sales, since I'd never learned that in my previous roles. And so I learned a lot about what's a sales development representative, what's an account executive, what's a head of sales do, what is a conversion pipeline. And that actually taught me a lot about B2B sales and how this whole process works. And so you guys are probably wondering, now that I learned how to do all this stuff, what is Mobot? So what we do at Mobot is we have a mobile QA solution that we use human supervised mechanical robots to do the testing. And so what that means is you have all these iOS, Android, iPadOS devices. A robot executes the test, and then it's supervised by a customer success manager or a human on our team. And then we actually verify that all the reports look correct. And then we will actually share the results of this QA with the customer. And so we service a lot of engineering teams, product management teams, essentially the people that I was our customer at my old job at Butterfly and at Palantir. And so that was really what I was looking to do, was build a solution to solve a problem that I experienced myself as a product manager. And so this is what our robots at Mobot looks like 3 years in. So we raised the seed round coming out of Y Combinator, and I used that money to hire a 6-person engineering team, a 6-person operations team, a few folks on sales, a few folks on in customer success. And we really honed in a process where a customer can send us their mobile application through a beta testing platform like TestFlight, Firebase, and then we will actually install the application onto our different test phones. And we will mount that phone to the robot. The robot recognizes it, calibrates the device, and then goes to work running different tests. And so when the robot gets stuck or confused, a member of our team will intervene and provide feedback. But then if it's the same thing the robot has seen before, there's no need for a human. So this really allows for us to just parallelize and more efficiently execute regression testing work. Because the reality is you need to test your application to make sure that it's functioning before you ship it out to customers. There were just so many people that were having to do all this manual QA before they shipped out the app. And it's very stressful if you ship out a version of the app that's broken. Your customers get angry, people are confused, they may just delete your app and never use it again. And so the stakes are very high. And so after this test report is generated, we do send a copy of it to our customers. And so that what that looks like is our customers get a screenshot by screenshot replay of everything that was executed by the robot. So they can sort of know without having to do the manual tapping themselves that someone, a robot, physically verified that their app works exactly the way that they intend for it to work. And we were able to build this without having to use fake emulation or other tools that are just not reliable and don't catch as many bugs. And very often, we will actually end up having a lot of customers that come to us and they tell us, hey, can you test things that we normally can't test through a traditional method? And a classic example of this is something like Apple Pay, where we are able to actually have the robot register a new Apple Pay method, select Apple Pay as a payment method, and then purchase and check out. And so when you're exchanging hands, money is exchanging hands, it's super important to make sure that your app is functioning as expected. And so that's basically Mobot in a nutshell. And you can definitely see how throughout essentially 2 decades of me evolving, my scientific journey as a kid, all the way to, nonprofits, the Teal Fellowship, all of that. That's where it's gotten me to where I am today. And I think it required some courage to just take a look at where I was at the time and figure out, is this really where I want to be? Just because I've been doing the same thing for the last, 5 to 10 years, is that what I want to be doing the next 5 to 10 years? And is it okay for me to just acknowledge that, hey, I want to do something different? All of these skills build on top of each other and not wasting anything. And it's okay to just go for a change. And so I think it took me a few years to really internalize and understand that. But hopefully some of what I've shared with you here gives you some inspiration as well as you figure out your journey. You don't have to know exactly what you're doing when you go into college. It's okay if you picked the wrong major and you realize that in your junior year, or even if you applied to the wrong colleges right now and you're like, oh crap, I should have probably gone somewhere else. That's okay. There's always time to recalibrate. Of course, it takes making sure that you have the right support system, explaining to them, coming up with a plan, and making sure that you're being very thoughtful about it. But I'm happy to also share any particular tips if needed during the Q&A. So feel free to ask me any questions that you'd like. And thank you for giving me the time to share my journey with you guys. And feel free to email me anytime. That's my email address.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. That wraps up the main session of the seminar. So it's now time for the Q&A box. So if you have any questions for Eden, please be sure to leave it in the chat, or for YouTube, it's the chat. For Zoom, it's the Q&A box. And we have quite a few questions, actually. Wow. All right, first question. What is the Thiel Fellowship? Could you tell us more about it?
Yeah. So the Teal Fellowship is a 2-year fellowship for folks under the age of 20 or around the age of 20 to drop out of college or high school. I think they've extended the scope since I first took the fellowship 10 years ago. But if you have an idea for a company or an organization that you'd like to start, the Teal Foundation will give you $100,000 over 2 years to go and pursue that idea. And a lot of it ends up being technology startups because they're trying to find controversial and cutting edge ideas that will change industries. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity there to kind of pursue what you want. During the fellowship, they have check-ins with you. They really surround you with a lot of advisors and mentors who can guide you that are in the industry. And so for me at the time, it gave me the chance to move out to San Francisco and actually really expose myself to the tech industry and learn a lot about what I wanted in my career. So highly recommend you guys consider looking into the Teal Fellowship. It is still an active program today. I do think that a lot of the emphasis that they have is around technology startups now, but I think it's a great program to do in addition to, for example, programs like Y Combinator. And the whole idea is that good ideas cannot wait until you're done college or maybe even high school. There were a couple high school dropouts in the early years, I remember. But I think it really kind of helped me question just like, why am I having to do okay, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, then I don't know, 6 years of grad school, and whatever it is, the path that's been defined. Or, you know, you join the finance industry as an analyst for 2 years, an associate for 2 years, and then a senior associate, and then a vice president, and all of that. There are all these different paths that other people have already laid out. And for you, if that is a path that resonates with you, then great. It almost makes your life easier because then you can just choose that path and do it really well. But I know there are a bunch of people out there like me where I looked at those existing paths and I just wasn't really sure yet what fit for me. And it was more stressful trying to get myself to fit into one of those existing paths than it was to actually just like break free from everything and start fresh. And as a 20-year-old, when you're given a chunk of cash and you've never been like untethered without a schedule before, it was definitely a very different thing. Like I had to learn to like, okay, remember to eat breakfast, remember to eat lunch, remember to schedule phone calls and come to meetings on time. And a lot of those skills that you learn probably in the first few years of working in a job after college, I had to learn that earlier when I was 19 or 20 during my Kiel Fellowship. So it's a great way to really help you grow up very quickly. It's not a program that's for everyone. And there is definitely nothing wrong with finishing college. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. I think it's different for everyone. And mostly the question comes down to, do you have a very compelling thing that you'd rather work on instead of what you're currently working on? And if you don't have any ideas, like that's okay. Just go to college. You'll learn a lot. You'll meet a lot of cool people, and you'll probably get more ideas coming out of it.
Thanks. All right, next question. What are the programming languages that you have learned to work effectively in this field?
Yeah, I would say in this day and age, at least as of 2021, Python and JavaScript are the two languages that are just most popular and will allow you to at least have a foot in the door in most careers. At the time when, 8 or 10 years ago when I was learning to code, I learned Java, I learned C#. Those are sort of very useful for more traditional legacy technology systems, but where things have evolved nowadays, I definitely encourage learning Python and JavaScript. Python's very good for manipulating data, and data science is a big field these days. And JavaScript is just very general web development, that being able to build basic projects that can solve problems, great for interviews. There are definitely more targeted programming languages that you can learn that are going to be better for particular jobs. Like, for example, at Mobot, our entire engineering team actually uses a functional programming language called Clojure. And so Clojure is a less common programming language, but for what we need to do, where we want to be very efficient about the software, about the data model, because we're building all of these high volume tests for robots that are being executed simultaneously, using a language like Clojure was an engineering decision that our team made. And also our vice president of engineering at Mobot ended up making that decision. And so that also goes into something I didn't talk about much, which was hiring people on your team. But that's the big thing that I learned, is that ultimately everything in my career taught me enough to kind of know the basics for talking to and communicating with people. But I'm not expected to be the magical software engineering expert that's going to build the whole technology, right? And really, that's what I realized over time, was I'm better at coming up with ideas, making sure I have the fluency to talk about them and execute them, but then hire actual experts to do the work if I need something really specialized. And it's kind of like when you're learning a new language and then you go to that country and you don't need to know how to have a business conversation in a new language. You just basically need to know like how to ask, can I go to the bathroom? Or maybe not can, where is the bathroom? How much does this cost? Or where is my hotel, right? Like those are the kinds of things that I felt like all of these skills I was learning was essentially foundational stuff that would help me grow my career in different industries. And so creating that optionality for myself until I really figured out what I was good at was very important at the beginning when I was younger and I wasn't quite sure. But I do also think that it's important to make sure that you're not constantly trying to just not make a decision, right? I've seen folks before where if you just spend your whole career trying not to specialize in anything, you're going to end up not being particularly good in one area and that will actually make it harder for you to excel in an industry. So you don't have to pick right when you get to college, and you probably don't want to pick in maybe your early 20s. But I would say by the time you get into your late 20s, which is kind of where I am now, like it is good to have an area of expertise that you're very good at. And so for me, that is product management across a variety of technology sectors. So I learned a lot of product management skills while running SunSaluter and at Palantir and at Butterfly, and now building my own company, Mobot. And so that's the common thread that kind of bridges all those things together.
Thanks. Yeah. I have a question for myself. Is Mobot profitable right now? Is it cash flowing? How's that going? And same goes for SunSaluter.
Yeah, so SunSaluter, basically, we've open sourced our design, and we don't actually have anyone that's employed at SunSaluter anymore. We're fully volunteer run. And basically, because we've open sourced the design, the only kind of volunteer work that needs to be done nowadays is answering questions and making sure that we facilitate the right partnerships between organizations that work with us. And on the Mobot side, most venture capital backed businesses you'll find probably are not expected to be profitable in the first few years. And the reason is because they want you to spend money in aggressive and ambitious ways to build something new that no one else has ever built before. And so we know hiring engineers, hiring product managers, hiring operations people, all of that costs money. And so that is more important to us right now than actually trying to become cash flow positive. But certainly, that is something that's on the path for next year. We are continuing to generate revenue, and we are growing roughly. Our subscription revenue is growing 4 times year over year. And so we are continuing to add the number of customers, and hopefully at some point it will converge and we will become cash flow positive. But if you ask most seed and Series A and Series B companies, many of them are not cash flow positive, but there's no right or wrong answer there, right? I think there are businesses that are more sustainable and have cash flow, have profitability. And so that's great. It means that they're going to be able to sustain themselves when a pandemic hits and things like that. And so being able to plan for different situations like that, it's very different for different teams and companies. But for us right now, we're very much focused on R&D and building out this robotic technology and getting it to work. And so we're not quite there yet, but hopefully next year.
Yeah, thanks. That was very helpful. All right, back to questions. Before you got the first funding / mentorship, like with Y Combinator, were you working as a team? If so, how did you find the team? If not, how did you manage without one?
Yeah, so until we raised our $3 million seed round after Y Combinator, I actually worked on everything solo by myself. So I quit my job and I couldn't afford an office, so I just worked in my apartment. And my wife was very supportive. She cleared out some space in our living room, and I had like my own little corner. And then I would call people and I would like search on LinkedIn and try to find potential customers by myself. So I sort of split my time where I was like 50% building this prototype for Mobot, and then 50% like calling people, interviewing people, trying to understand if what I was working on was a real problem. And so I think my path as a solo founder is a little different. You'll probably hear there's a lot of books and media and podcasts out there that say you should always find a co-founder. But for me, I'm just a very independent person. And I guess I never found the co-founder on my journey. And I really believe that starting a company with a founder, a person that you haven't worked with much, you don't trust, it's a big decision, right? It's like making the decision to randomly get married to someone you like just met online like 2 weeks ago. Like you wouldn't do that. I really think finding a co-founder and building a co-founder relationship is the same way. And similar, using the romantic analogy again, like some people never get married and there's nothing wrong with that. And in my case, I just ended up starting the company by myself and no one else really came along. And by the time we'd raised money, the company was already founded. But then essentially what I built around me was a great founding set of employees that, they understand the technology, they built Mobot and helped really understand what we were doing. And so they're a big part of our story as well. But I think it really is different for different people. I just happen to be very independent, and also for me, had a chip on my shoulder where I kind of wanted to prove that I could do this by myself. And so it's different. Like if your sister or your brother or your cousin or your college roommate or someone you've known for years wants to start a company with you, it could be amazing. And there are definitely people who don't know each other before and just randomly meet up and start a company, and they end up going well as well. But I think it's always something you have to think through very carefully. You have to really make sure you know the person. Like, do you both want the same thing? That's so important.
Yep. Thanks. All right. Here's a question. Can you describe your typical day as at work as a CEO of Mobot?
Yeah. So in the early days, like I was mentioning, my job was like 50% building, 50% meetings, looking on LinkedIn, trying to find anyone who worked in QA and would take a meeting with me, getting a lot of people who were saying like, no, this is not a good, like, why would you ever use a robot to test? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And I definitely got a lot of those meetings at the beginning. But as we started to find more people who said, yes, this is actually really cool, and I started to fundraise and I went through Y Combinator, a lot of my time evolved to be more meeting heavy and less on the prototyping, probably also because the prototype was getting more built so that I could use it more and I didn't need to spend as much time building it. I also knew that the prototype I was building was going to get thrown out when we got a real engineering team. And so I only felt like I needed to build the minimum viable product to get this to move forward. And so nowadays, as my role has evolved, I do spend a lot of my time in business development meetings. I start off the day really trying to figure out for my team, like, okay, what are our priorities for today? What customers, what questions have come in overnight? And then I make sure my team is settled. We usually do a team stand-up. And then I will go into a series of fundraising meetings with potential investors who are interested in meeting us and having a connection, even though we're not actively fundraising right now. Sometimes I will have meetings with internal employees to plan sort of next steps. Maybe they have questions. There's also kind of one-on-ones because you want to make sure people are happy at working at Mobot. I take a lot of their feedback. And then we also have lots of meetings with customers, potential customers, and really trying to hone in on our sales process. So convincing other CTOs, VPs of engineering, product managers, and QAs really how to use Mobot and why they should use Mobot and selling them Mobot. So I would say a lot of my day nowadays is honestly a lot of meetings, like 30-minute blocks on my calendar that are just stacked. And then I try to have a little bit of time at the beginning and end of the day where I'm kind of doing more maintenance, administrative work, and also making sure that just like the company is stable and that everyone else has what the tools and the solutions and ideas that they need to be able to do their job. And as you grow as a CEO and a founder, like my job is no longer about building things or writing code or building a robot. It's about making sure that everyone else has what they need to do their jobs. And if that means just like, I don't know, buying lunch for people so that they don't go hungry, like that's kind of my job, is like making sure that their health insurance is not expired and making sure that they have all their questions answered and that they've had a meeting facilitated with the other person. And I end up being sort of this like connector piece in the company. And so that role has changed a lot in the last 3 years that I've been doing Mobot.
Thanks. Next question. What do you think made Mobot stand out apart from other startups that pitched to Y Combinator?
I think there are a couple things. One thing is that what we are doing is really unique. We have this physical hardware robot and we have software, and that we're trying to use physical hardware to solve a software problem. I think once you get past sort of the initial hurdle of like, why should you even do this, which we were able to convince the Y Combinator team, people ultimately got on board and found it to be a very unique solution that no one else was doing. And especially with the pandemic last year, it was probably even more challenging to start a hardware company because there's a lot of tinkering. You have to have a machine shop space. And so for us, the fact that we got this head start before the pandemic makes us more defensible. It gives us a head start to kind of figure things out. And of course, like some of the customers that I had built relationships with before applying to Y Combinator helped to really confirm that, hey, this is an actual problem that we're solving. And of course, like my own background, being able to explain my story, that I worked at Palantir, that I worked at Butterfly, and I actually experienced this problem firsthand. And so I'm uniquely qualified to solve the problem because I have a hardware background, I have software engineering experience. That helps, everything kind of combines together. And so you really have to, especially as a solo founder, kind of do even more to kind of convince people that, hey, just because I'm by myself doesn't mean that I'm less competent than a team of 2 or 3. And so I really kind of had to go above and beyond to prepare myself and prepare the company for Y Combinator.
Thanks. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think we're running short on time. There's just so many questions, but so little time. So I guess we'll have to wrap up the Q&A session. I guess we can start with the raffles now. If you want to ask more questions, I guess you can contact Eden. What was your email again?
I will put it in the chat.
All right. So if you have any further questions, please contact Eden. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we have for this session today. Thank you so much to Eden for providing us with all this insightful information. It was truly inspiring. If you look at our screen right now, the information to enter into our raffle is on screen, so make sure you do that in order to win a free pair of JBL headphones. And we'll now give a few minutes for you to enter the raffle.
Actually, now that I think about it, during this break, during the small short break during the raffle, I guess you can answer a few more questions since there are just so many. So is that all right with you?
Yeah, I'm down.
Alrighty, let's do this. Here's a good one. In your opinion, can robots solve all our real world problems? Is there anywhere where technology has to be more advanced? What are your thoughts on this?
Great question. And I think this is one of the things that also makes Mobot unique is we don't believe in 100% automation with robots. I think that the best way technology should be applied is when you put human creativity in the right places at the right time. And so what we believe with Mobot is there's going to be a chunk of work that's tested every single time, like log into the app, enter your username, enter your password, click login, and then like add an item to your shopping cart and check out. Like some of that stuff is going to be the same from release to release. And so where you really only need a human to intervene is when you have an app crash or like, oh, something really weird happened and you got this error message, right? So it's almost analogous to a self-driving car where most of the time, if you like, and I know most cars these days, if you're just on the highway or you're doing a basic lane change, like you want a human ready there just in case, but you don't need the human to like fully be paying attention. A robot and technology can be doing that part. But when you have a pedestrian, when you have a pothole, that's really when you want a human to be there at the right place at the right time to intervene. And so that efficient orchestration of human plus technology is really the key to using technology in the right way. I think it would be overly ambitious and not at all realistic to have 100% automation with our robots. And so that's also really something we try to tell our customers is you can feel assured that the robot's doing the work, but then a human is checking it and confirming it before we send it out to you, because you can't always just trust pure automation. It may be missing some context. It might miss some small details or some nuances in the product, in the roadmap. And so that's really what we do that's different. So I don't believe in 100% automation. I think Mobot and our technology journey is on a very similar path to a lot of self-driving cars. We're going to get smarter. Robots are going to get smarter at testing, but I do think that at the right place at the right time, you always need to have a human nearby just to check on things.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's pretty much it for a short break for the raffle. So again, if you have questions, I guess you can copy and paste those questions straight back and send it to Eden. And all right, so that's pretty much it for the raffle. The winner has been chosen, but we will announce that at the closing ceremony. So stick around for that. All right, well, and our next seminar will be on passion, education, and the arts at 2:00 p.m. Eastern time, so 10 minutes. So be sure to stick around for that. Additionally, be sure to thank Eden for her presentation today. To reiterate, it was amazing to hear about her journey and her achievements and accomplishments so far, and take to heart what Eden has taught us. We are truly blessed to have her as a speaker today. So again, thank you all for coming today. Don't miss the next session on passion, education, and arts. And we hope you will have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the break.
All right. Hello, everyone. It is 2 o'clock, so we will get started. That was an amazing performance by our speaker, Shuhong, today. So, hello, everyone. My name is Harold Wu. I am a member of the MYE Youth Leadership Committee team. Welcome to our third event of today. It is on passion, education, and the arts. The IRM conference is hosted by the MYE Youth Empowerment Foundation, a 501c3 dedicated to promoting STEM education and supporting K-12 students so that they can thrive in the new technological world. You can check out our other seminars at myeb.com/IRM-event, and our website is myeb.com. Additionally, we would also like to give a quick shout out to our partners and sponsors, as none of these events would be possible without them. Their work is truly what allowed us to have this conference and help us prosper and make an even greater impact on the world. With that said, I would like to, I'm very honored to host a seminar with Shuhong Zheng as our guest. Today, we are going to be exploring how to better approach education and our reception of the arts. If there are any questions while Shuhong speaks, feel free to send them in the Q&A function here on Zoom. Remember to stay until the end of the seminar, as we will have a raffle and you may be lucky and win one of our many prizes. Let me get started by giving a brief introduction of our guest speaker. Shuhong has won many top prizes in competitions such as the Thousand Island International Competition, the David Du Bois Piano Competition, Lee University International Piano Competition, and many MTNA and MMTA competitions. He has been featured as soloist and performed concerti with orchestras from Alfred, New York to Saar Louis, Germany. A frequent participant in prestigious music festivals, Shuhong attended the Long Long International Foundation in 2016 and also the 2017 Gina Bachauer International Piano Festival at Salt Lake City, the 2018 Emil Jalel's International Piano Festival in Freiburg, Germany, as well as the 2019 Van Cliburn Junior Piano Competition and Festival. Outside of piano, Shuhong loves to read, hit the gym, and play hockey. Shuhong will also be attending Harvard University in the coming semester. It is my honor to welcome Shuhong to our 2021 IRM event.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Just gonna start sharing my presentation. So first, I'd like to extend my thanks to MYE for giving me this opportunity. It's very, very rare that someone calls you a role model in any capacity. And so it's a big burden and responsibility, I think, on my shoulders here. So I hope I live up to that. Second, I'd like to thank Harold for hosting this session with me. And I'd like to extend my gratitude to all of you listening, because it's very rare that we get an opportunity to have our voices heard, to speak like this. So I'm very honored to be able to do that. And it means a lot to me that people would be willing to take time out of their busy days to listen to what someone like me might have to say. So I'd like to start off by introducing myself a little further, more into my childhood, since I believe my background will be rather important for what I have to talk about today. As said, my name is Xiong Zhan. I'm 19 years old, and most of my life has always been centered around the arts, learning, and a lot of physical activities. Playing the piano has always been the very forefront of my life, and along with studying music since I was around 9 years old, it's always been the very strongest director in my life. But before then, I spent most of my time doing schoolwork, and especially what I think is important, completing a lot of these thick, like textbook style workbooks full of these various math questions and reading comprehension quizzes that a lot of you guys might have done too. They're like those books that have, say, like curriculum on it or whatever, and then they have a bunch of reading passages and you read it and you answer questions, so on and so forth. But in the background of all of this, most of the excitement and fun in my life has been fueled by playing a lot of sports and doing physical activities. Since I wasn't really allowed a lot of free time when I was younger, so I took advantage of all the time I did playing hockey, running cross country in middle school. These days, going to the gym almost on a daily basis. But before all of that, I even did figure skating when I was really little. But anyways, yeah, lots of physical activities I think was also very important to my development. And I firmly believe these three factors, music, education, and physical education, have been probably the chief guides to what I judge to be a rather favorable position that I am in now. I mean, of course, I'm only 19 years old, and fortunes can very quickly reverse in the coming years. Hopefully not. So, I want this talk to be shaded over by two very important things. First, once again, I'm only 19. So I don't have nearly as the experience as many other speakers you've heard the past 2 days. And I've once again only experienced my own small fraction of wedge of life. Although I do try my best always to be expanding these limited horizons. So take everything I say very, very critically. Please tear apart everything I have to say to really find truly sound nuggets of wisdom I might have buried beneath all this debris of talk. Second important thing is Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. Most importantly, the second formulation of it, and that is act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. So what does this mean? What does all this jargon mean? Essentially, treat others and yourself never merely for your own sake, as you would with a tool or something, but always keep in mind the humanity of the other person, that they are worthy ends in themselves. They have their own goals, and that they are worthy endeavors in and for themselves. Of course, this is a moral dictum that refers to how we should treat other people, but I would like to expand it to how we approach our own education and the arts. So I'd like to start off with a simple illustration. Think about all the subjects that you excel most at in school. Actually, it doesn't even have to be school. It can be any extracurricular or just anything you might happen to be really good at or interested in, like a video game or a movie franchise. Chances are you have an innate curiosity about these things, right? A curiosity that drives you to want to learn more about whatever it is, regardless of what you might have to gain from it, whether materially or from others, social validation, such and such. I believe that this kind of curiosity, the one that is very innate and drives itself for its own purpose, is the only sustainable way to learn about anything. Think about it. Think about the subjects in schools that you hate the most, even if you do well at it. If any of those external incentives were taken away from doing that thing, like needing to get a good grade, or maybe it's a requirement that you have to take the course, or maybe you want to get rich off it, like get financial earnings from doing that thing, would you still have any will to learn about it? Would you still learn about it if those things were taken away? I would wager for the most part, no. This begs the question, do we lose our curiosity for something because we don't enjoy that thing? Or do we not enjoy that thing because we've lost our curiosity? Well, this is a cyclical matter for sure. I mean, like maybe you start off by not enjoying it and therefore you aren't curious about it. And because you aren't curious about it, you still further hate it. I bet that the first part of that cycle begins with the loss of curiosity. Well, how come? If you think about how children often act, children that you might know, nieces, nephews, younger siblings, or even yourself when you were younger, how they often act in class or upon learning something new from their parents or a visit to the doctors or something like that. For anything they can wrap their heads around, their first reaction will almost always be a follow-up with some kind of question: what, why, or how. Let's say you take them outside to view a starry sky. First thing they might ask is, well, what are stars? And then you tell them, well, they're little things in the space that give off light and such. And then they might ask, how many stars are there in the night sky? And then, I don't know the answer to that, but you'd tell them, and then they would say something like, how far away are they? So on and so forth. What are they made of? Do they have names? Children are very, very, very curious about these things, almost ad nauseum. But these are all questions many our age would quickly dismiss as pointless. I mean, we'd say, okay, aside from if you're an astronomer or something, why do we care what stars are, how many there are, what are their names? We don't. There's no point. They don't have any bearing over our life. And perhaps we are right in this dismissal. After all, why would it be important to know that? But to that I say, knowledge for knowledge's sake is enough of a reason. It's enough of a worthy reason. And I'm sure many of all would understand this. We all have quite useless information rattling about in our heads that we hold quite dear, whether it be movie trivia or video game information, or just whatever things we like, our favorite song lyrics. And perhaps there is value to these kinds of knowledge, these kinds of questions. So where does this curiosity go? Many might think that it's just a natural part of growing up. Like it's so common we think of adults as just very cynical, uncaring about things that don't matter to their own internal sphere. But I don't buy that. I know myself, many others, my friends, and I'm sure a lot of you guys too are extremely curious people. Maybe not as much as children are, but still quite curious about almost anything and everything nonetheless. I mean, how often do we browse on YouTube or various web pages that just on totally trivial information that wouldn't affect us in life at all? But I think the problem about curiosity, about the question of where it goes as we grow older, I think the answer is how we educate children from an early age. I think much of our school systems are the culprit to this issue. The mindset many of us have been conditioned to by our parents at home is much like this. Do your homework and get good grades so you can be rewarded with a new game or toy, or you get to hang out with your friends. But if you do badly, we will punish you by having a game taken away from you, or you will not be allowed to hang out with your friends, so on and so forth. And then while we're at school, the condition is do your homework and do well on tests so you can be rewarded with a good grade, and therefore your parents will reward you too. But if you don't do well, you will be punished with a bad one. This system of reward and punishments creates a huge issue for our curiosity because our focus shifts away from the content being learned, which should be the focus, to getting a good grade or avoiding a bad one. In Kantian terms, we have now treated the education as a mere means and no longer as a worthy end in itself, thereby deferring our own curiosity away from education and on to a want for some reward or avoiding some punishment. Education simply becomes a tool for us and not worthy information and knowledge for its own sake. Even St. Augustine of Hippo knew this when he wrote in that great book, The Confessions, almost 2,000 years ago. He said, I learned Latin without threat of punishment from anyone forcing me to learn it. My own heart constrained me to bring its concepts to birth, which I could not have done unless I had learned some words, not from formal teaching, but by listening to people talking. And they in turn were the audience for my thoughts. This experience sufficiently illuminates the truth that free curiosity has greater power to stimulate learning than rigorous coercion. That's pretty groundbreaking statement, I think, even in our modern day. And this idea is not unsupported by empirical evidence. A 1972 study conducted by Edward L. Deasy at the University of Rochester showed subjects given a contingent monetary reward, so basically a monetary reward that was reliant on some kind of performance, or threats of punishment, performed worse on a puzzle than subjects given only a non-contingent monetary reward. DC had subjects complete a Soma puzzle. So Soma puzzle is this thing, it's like a cubic puzzle where you have to put the pieces together, not only to form a cube, but any arrangement that the puzzle wants you to arrange the pieces in. So one group of subjects, the non-contingent pay group, was paid $2 for participating in the study and nothing else. And they weren't told that these $2 were part of this study. They were just like, here's the $2. We're not going to research. We're not going to study the $2 aspect. It's just that's their pay for participating. While another group of subjects was paid $1 for every puzzle they solved without the non-contingent $2 payment. And they too weren't told that it was part of the experiment. They were just given the $1 for every one they solved. They solved. A third group performed the same task, but with threats of punishment if they performed poorly. So keeping in mind that all the pay and punishment wasn't part of the experiment, or it wasn't told to the subjects that was part of the experiment, results showed that the group that was given the contingent pay and the group that was threatened with punishment performed on average slower than those who were given the non-contingent pay. Isn't that pretty paradoxical to how we understand the world? We would think that the ones that weren't rewarded would be the ones that do worse than the ones that are rewarded for doing better or punished for doing worse, but it's the complete opposite. And I find this reflected in my own personal experiences growing up too. Those workbooks that I mentioned earlier that I did in elementary school, I was never rewarded for completing those. I just did them because I thought they were interesting, and my mom just made me do them. She never gave me anything for them. And so my brain had to kind of work itself to validate those workbooks in and for themselves. So I found intrinsic satisfaction in completing it page by page, or I found satisfaction in learning something new, or just simply satiating my curiosity. All these things were enough of a reason for me to continue doing them. And same with learning music. When I started out, I was never rewarded for learning a new piece or anything on it. I just played it and my mom was like, okay, cool. Never rewarded for any of that process. But instead, I gained satisfaction out of believing that I was creating something beautiful, or at least I thought to be beautiful. I was only 9, so I was pretty bad. But and also the sense of accomplishment of learning something. Those were enough to continue the endeavor, which leads me to my next major point, the importance of the arts and why I think everyone should strive to learn them in some capacity. A second. I believe studying music alone has been the greatest influence in my own education. On the surface, playing the piano improved my memorization skills, my motor skills, and studying music led me to study more of the arts, the history of the arts, and eventually just more general history, things like that. But most importantly, I think, and above all else, music taught me to empathize, to think outside my own narrow sphere for once, especially in a culture that seems to value an almost narcissistic focus on the self. You think about everyone who does all these clubs at school for the sake of just writing it on their college apps and then never caring about it again. But upon listening to the sublime counterpoint of a Bach fugue, or the pure intimacy found in late Beethoven string quartets, the pathos-laden gestures in the chamber music of Schoenberg, or whatever music one enjoys, the pure serenity felt gagaku, or an exhilarating jazz solo, a listener should be forced to step outside their own narrow existence, to observe and relish the beauty of this work of art, to see something else not as a mere means for once, but as an end in itself. Something not even human. I mean, music doesn't even have a physical form. And for me, that's why I've always been drawn to studying music and music theory and history. Quite useless information in a sense, but once again, knowledge and beauty for itself is a worthy endeavor. I didn't have much to gain externally from that music I made. And that music didn't really serve me. It kind of existed for its own purpose. And for that reason, I think Oscar Wilde so very cleverly put it, all art is quite useless. An autonomous work of art is very, very much worth observation, even if we don't benefit from it materially. And if one is able to feel that for a work of art, then it's not hard to extend that to a fellow person, another human, a thing far, far more vast, far more complex, and far more beautiful than a creation by a person could ever be. And this isn't necessarily restricted to music. I only chose music since, to me, it's the one that I've always grown up with most. It's the most emotionally accessible immediately. And I find it really interesting because music is so much more abstract than all other forms of art. So I think even more so than the others, it inspires empathy. And it's also the one I'm most well acquainted with. But this doesn't just have to be music. It can also be in the visual arts. I mean, look at this, man. Just looking at Michelangelo's Pietà. How can one not feel sympathy for not only the Virgin Mary gazing upon her dead son, but also for all mothers of the world who have suffered this kind of loss or even are just anxious about the possibility of this? It's such a powerful form of expression that we have to not think about ourselves for once and empathize with another. The other great value in studying the arts is the sense of being part of something greater than oneself. And this is something that happens both synchronically or at the moment and diachronically across time. Playing music in a chamber group, singing in a choir, or playing in an orchestra, or if you dance, dancing in a trope in a group, or if you do theater, being part of that. This all lends to a sense of contributing something to a greater, more whole thing beyond oneself. And then once again, this process also unfolds, and I think perhaps more importantly, diachronically across time. When creating music or art, one is part of a great lineage, a great tradition of artists, a great history. And one finds beauty and value in those pre-existing works and transforms them and innovates them to our current times. To have this sense of inheriting some kind of accumulated wisdom and beauty, this treasure that's been passed down for centuries, and to still find value it holds, is almost, I think, the ultimate form of treating someone or something as an end in itself. To be able to empathize with your peers is one thing, but to be able to empathize with the people of a far older past and to find value in their existence, not to just use them as a stepping stone or a lesson, or in this case, past existence, is another. Appreciating and studying art is a wonderful gateway to being able to treat all forms of knowledge and education as an end and not as a mere means. And once again, if you think about, and I've been talking about the arts this time, but the same thing with just the language we speak. I mean, these words aren't our own. We've inherited them from a more abstract public whole. So everything we do, we have to be cognizant of the fact that it's not just ourselves, it's a greater public whole. And finally, I would like to emphasize an often overlooked form of education, that is physical education. Our mind is inevitably tied to our bodies and will only work as well as we physically treat it. This not only includes proper exercise, but also a proper diet and proper sleep. This may seem obvious, but how often, I mean, I'm not just talking about everyone else. I'm guilty, just as guilty of this myself. This may seem obvious, but how often do we opt out of a proper meal for something like instant ramen? How often do we miss out on our sleep just to stay up a bit longer, either like studying or doing some menial things that we missed out in the day? It's so commonplace, and it's so easy to forget, especially with studying, because we think that, oh, if I just stay up a little longer, I can study more. Like, no, we're gonna do worse on our tests if we do that. Sleep is so much more important. And I love that in one particularly memorable exchange, I think, between Socrates and Epigenes, a companion of his, Socrates notes to Epigenes, "You look like you need exercise, Epigenes." To which he responds, as many of us may, we can easily imagine ourselves in this place. "Well, I'm not an athlete, Socrates." And Socrates gives him this lengthy reply that I've cut down a bit because it will make the point just as clear. He says, give me a second. He says, "I tell you, because military training is not publicly recognized by the state, you must not make that an excuse for being a whit less careful in attending to yourself. For you may rest assured that there is no kind of struggle apart from war, and no undertaking in which you will be worse off by keeping your body in better condition. For in everything men do, the body is useful, and in all uses of the body, it is of great importance to be in as high a state of physical efficiency as possible. Why? Even in the process of thinking, in which the use of the body seems to be reduced to a minimum, it is a matter of common knowledge that grave mistakes may often be traced to bad health. And because the body is in a bad condition, loss of memory, depression, discontent, insanity often assail the mind so violently as to drive whatever knowledge it contains clear out of it. But a sound and healthy body is a strong protection to a man. And at least there is no danger then of such a calamity happening to him through physical weakness. On the contrary, it is likely that his sound condition will serve to produce effects the opposite of those that arise from bad condition. And surely a man of sense would submit to anything to obtain the effects that are the opposite of those mentioned in my list. Besides, it is a disgrace to grow old through sheer carelessness before seeing what manner of a man you may become by developing your bodily strength and beauty to their highest limit. But you cannot see that if you are careless, for it will not come on its own accord." So after a speech like that, there's really not anything for someone like me to say about the matter. But there's one more thing I would like to say about physical education, and that is how much I think we all have to gain from participating in team sports. I believe my years of playing hockey have taught me more about teamwork, not being afraid to depend on others, and being there to support others than anything else I've done in my life. Because one must carry their own weight and be able to help others when others need it too, and be willing to share responsibility. And that sense of community is once again tied with that whole concept of thinking outside one's own sphere and being part of a whole greater than oneself. So, what was the point of all of this? What was the point? Well, to be frank, I think you can do whatever you want with what I've given. I personally want to talk about this because it's always been a matter close to my heart. So often do I meet people completely and wholly unenamored with what's taught in schools, who find it a complete waste of time, and especially with how the education system is set up, as I mentioned earlier, and with how schools are run, I can see why so many feel this way. And it's really disheartening to see such an important part of society being thrown out like this. So often do I meet young musicians, even very, very competent ones, who have so little regard for the music they make, who don't even really listen to classical music outside the few pieces they've played, and who find music theory and history completely meaningless and boring. And once again, with how it's treated, how students are often raised to view it as simply a means to get into their college of choice and not as the creation of something beautiful, an inheritance, and a practice in craftsmanship. I can see why this happens. And I see so many intelligent, amazing people who completely neglect their physical well-being, thinking it is a sacrifice that can easily be made for extra time to study, when in reality, this kind of sacrifice will never be sustainable and will always be harmful in the long run. We need to view knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge not as merely a means, not just as a tool to get into the college you want or to make money, but to view it as a worthy enterprise in and for itself. Now, I'd like to end this talk with one of the closing stanzas from T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which occurred to me that it would make a great close to a talk like this. So The Wasteland is an absolutely earth-shattering poem I discovered a few years ago because Eliot's poetry was recommended to me by a music teacher, and I kind of just went in and dug up a lot and found that The Wasteland absolutely changed how I viewed a lot of things. So it's always stayed extremely close to my mind and my heart. This stanza in particular makes allusions to four main sources, and most of The Wasteland is densely packed with allusions and meaning. So if you do decide to read it, tread slowly and carefully. And please do read it if you have the time. It's worth the endeavor. First and foremost, and please excuse my pronunciation, as I do not know Sanskrit like Eliot did, but the first source is the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is one of the principal Upanishads or texts of Hinduism. And one of the stories in it, Lord Brahma, depicted here with the four heads, four faces, who is the kind of supreme creator deity, tells the Devas, basically the gods, Asuras, the demons, I mean, these are rough translations, and the men how to live a better life. And he does so in the form of a one-syllable clap of thunder, da. The men interpret this as data, or to give, or to have self-sacrifice. The Asuras as diadvam, or to emphasize, empathize, to be compassionate. And finally, the Devas as damyata, or to control, to show restraint. This answer comes at the end of the poem, which discusses much of the loneliness of humanity and the immorality. And it serves as kind of an answer to this loneliness, especially this stanza, which focuses on diadvam, to empathize, to be compassionate. The second source of this stanza is Dante's Inferno. If any of you guys have read it, I'm sure you'll remember the very, very cruel and ugly fate suffered by Count Ugolino, who's depicted in the center here, in the deepest pit of hell, along with Archbishop Ruggieri. So the Archbishop betrays Count Ugolino, who in turn was a traitor to his country, and Ruggieri locks him up in a tower, making him slowly starve to death along with his sons, while his sons plead Ugolino to eat them. While in hell, he tells Dante this line while he's being locked up: "I heard the door below being bolted to the horrible tower." It kind of, Eliot uses this as a symbol of the kind of loneliness we face in our own focus on our own well-being. And this whole stanza resists against Eliot's third influence, which is a philosopher, F.H. Bradley, that he studied while at Harvard. His essay, Appearance and Reality, where he writes, "My external sensations are no less private to myself than are my thoughts and my feelings. In either case, my experience falls within my own circle, closed on the outside, and with all its elements alike, every sphere is opaque to the other which surround it. It's a rather depressingly isolated viewpoint, but it's not unlike the fate Count Ugolino suffered, stuck isolated in that tower, a result of his own treason and the treason of another. And it's not unlike the condition that many of us feel, I think, an overwhelming sense of loneliness at times while we focus solely on ourselves. Finally, Eliot makes reference to Coriolanus, who is one of the loneliest characters in all of Shakespeare's works, and in general, one of the loneliest characters ever written. Coriolanus betrays his nation as a result of his own contempt, lack of compassion, and pride, and is ultimately betrayed and killed far from his nation, family, and friends. He is all alone when he dies. And with that, here is the stanza. Da, Diadvam. I've heard the key turn in the door once and turn once only. We think of that key, each in his prison, thinking of the key, each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you so much, Yuhang, for all of that wise and inspiring information. And with that, we're going to now wrap up the main session of our seminar and continue on to the Q&A section. As a reminder to everyone, if you had not had the chance yet, make sure to ask all of your questions in the Q&A box below for Shuhang. Personally, I want to start off the Q&A section with my very own question. As a fellow pianist, how do you get yourself to become confident when on a stage or when playing piano in front of a large crowd? Personally, whenever I go and, to competitions or if I perform, my hands get shaky, I get really nervous and sweaty. So what do you have some advice towards something like that?
Yeah, so very technical question. I I think all of us suffer this, all of us who have performed. And I can't say I have a full definitive answer because I'm still nervous when I perform, but I think the best, easiest, most obvious piece of advice is just to get really firm in memorizing your pieces and playing them. But as a mentality thing, when you're on stage, I think a really great way to think about it is not as a test or a test of own performance, but rather as just a sharing of music, because that's what it is at the end of the day. And I think it ties much with what I just talked about, the idea of just kind of wanting to share this beauty with others and not so being so concerned with their own well performance, but just being like, hey, here's my opportunity to really make something beautiful and hopefully and have other people enjoy it. So I think that keeping that mentality while just being very firm with whatever you're playing is the best way to go.
All right, sounds great. I will use that advice. Our next question is, do you have a career goal? And do you want to go professional with piano?
So right now, my career goals are very vague, which is part of why I said earlier that fortunes can very easily reverse in the coming years. But I hope that in college I can get a clear goal of what I want to do. Right now, I'm thinking of something along the lines of uh, economics and politics, going maybe into economic policy for government, something like that, macroeconomics. But there's also a part of me that really just wants to make music when I grow up, and we'll have to see. Maybe I'll do that in grad school. It all comes down to how these next 4 years go.
All right, sounds amazing. I remember you mentioned like you like to go to the gym a lot. Can you give us like kind of a rundown of what your daily, routine or what you like to do every day looks like?
Oh yeah, okay. So my daily routine has really solidified since I've just been on a gap year, and obviously we've been stuck in our houses for the most part. But I'll wake up. I'll do a lot of reading as soon as I wake up. That's my favorite time to read, I think. Uh, and then I'll just have I do it like reading is a great part. I think everyone should just read as much as they can. Really contributes to just understanding, I think, others better. Have
All right.
lunch. I'll practice fun because musicians need to practice. And then I'll go to the gym, come back. I've been learning to swim these days, so I've been doing that too. And then I'll practice some more, read some more, and yeah, whatever the day throws at me, I'll just get done.
All right, sounds awesome. Do you have a pianist that you look up to?
Oh, pianist that I look up to is hard because I tend to study more about composers, but there's a couple pianists I respect a lot. One in particular, is Sir Andras Schiff, who's a wonderful pianist technically, but also his mentality on music is one I much agree with respecting, not just respecting composer's intention, but understanding that you're inheriting this wonderful music from many hundreds of years ago, and you need to make it beautiful for audiences to hear, so it continues on, this tradition continues on.
All right, on the topic of composers, I just saw a question that asked, who is your favorite composer and why?
Oh, okay. That's a extremely hard question to answer because they're all great and they're all so different. Easiest ones to say is whatever you're listening to, but if I were to just rattle off some that are off the top of my head right now, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Schoenberg, Stravinsky, Messiaen. Messiaen's wonderful, very underrated. Uh, so many. It's way too difficult. And I would say the common now I can answer the why part of that question. The reason why I love all of these ones so much is because their music isn't just music. Like I despise Chopin. I'm not gonna lie. I hate Liszt a lot of the times. And the reason is because a lot of their music isn't just music that makes you feel something. Like it doesn't exist just for the sake of like, oh, I want to feel good right now or feel this emotion. Like it's not just that. Like a good music, especially I think by those composers, are music that make you not just feel things but also force you to think and actively engage with the music, consider the dramatic structure of it, the proportions, the structure, the development of it, much like how you would engage with a story. And well, not that music is a story, I hate that analogy, but the idea that you gotta actively engage and concentrate on it, not just feel things flowing through you.
All right, that remark about Chopin hit me a little bit hard, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Sorry,
It's all right. It's all right. I'll get through it. And our next question is, do you have any experience outside of music, for like composing music, or like do you play any other instruments? Like what do you like to do for music outside of piano?
Outside piano, well, as I said, studying music theory and history is wonderful. I do play a couple other instruments, like a little bit of clarinet, a little bit of French horn, and a long time ago, I did a tiny bit of violin. I was awful at it, won't count that. And I do a little composing on the side because, I'm terrible at it, but I do think it's nice to have like an outlet for those kind of things.
All right. We have a couple more questions. One is, how does someone regain their sense of curiosity from something they used to enjoy but do not, like right now? Like
That's
kind of like a hobby that you made a like kind of enjoyed in the past, something like that.
Yeah, that's a very hard question to answer because what's lost sometimes is it really just feels so distant and lost. For me, recently I've been regaining my curiosity about reading because I read a lot when I was very young. I kind of stopped reading in general just around middle school and high school, not only because I just swamped with schoolwork and stuff and piano, but also because I just kind of lost my interest in reading. But over the summer, what I've found that has helped me regain my curiosity, and specifically just reading, has just been one, forcing myself to, sometimes just being like, I'm going to do this, and then making a habit out of it is one thing. And then second, to try digging in and extremely more so than you would passively, but actively engaging with whatever you're doing and really digging in to see if you can find again what made that thing meaningful to you.
All right. Yeah, I really like that answer. And another question is related to your love of reading, as you just said. What are some like books you like to read, or what genres are your favorites?
Oh, so most of the books I've been reading, well, pretty much all of them have been like the canonic works of literature in the West. which I enjoy very greatly. And another reason I've been reading them a lot is because I think in high school I missed out a lot on reading those since our curriculum didn't have too many of those. But yeah, those are mainly the works I've been enjoying reading, those Western canonic texts.
All right. And I think that's about it for our Q&A section. We will wrap it up and start heading to our raffle. So thank you so much to Shu Hong for answering all of our questions today. If you look to our right on the next slide, we have the raffle information. Make sure to scan the QR code to enter a Google form, and then we will shortly have everyone fill it out, and then we will have Shu Hong give everyone, the winner for today. Since we're waiting, I can ask a couple more questions since we're kind of just, sitting here idly anyways. What are some challenges that you've encountered while playing the piano?
Oh, every day is a challenge because you first have to overcome these little technical parts and memorization. But I would assume you mean on a broader spectrum, and I think one of the main challenges you have to overcome is knowing that there will always be at least 50 people better than you, if not more, hundreds, thousands. That challenge is an extremely hard one because then you often feel like, what's the point in what I'm doing if there's always going to be someone better? Well, part of that is understanding that that's not the point of making music. It's not to be the best. Once again, it's not a self-serving thing. Music in and for itself is a worthy end in itself, and one must always keep in mind that the point of making music is to create something beautiful and not to be always trying to be better than everyone else.
All right, thank you so much. One more. I read this question. I found it a little bit interesting. Maybe you'll understand it better than me. But the person asked, have you read The Cave by Plato? I don't know if it was Pluto or Plato. I know Pluto. Yeah, I don't know the text, but let me finish. There's like another half of it. It says, if so, how does it impact your take on education?
All right, so I believe Plato's allegory of the cave isn't like a text in itself. It's part of a dialogue, which I haven't read. I don't know which dialogue it's part of, but I am aware of it. The one about the people in the cave and the light shining on, and so on and so forth. Allegory to what enlightened people versus people who are more ignorant about things are. I think I view it mostly as like an interesting illumination onto how the world is. I can't see it's affected too much how I've approached education, especially my own education. But it is, I think, a very insightful way of viewing the world.
All right. I just sent you the number. Shu Hong, go ahead and tell everyone our winner for the raffle today.
I'll say winner is 7.
7. All right. Lucky number 7. Make sure to stick around for the closing ceremony because the winners will be announced there. But with that, that is it for today. Thank you so much to Shu Hong and everyone who is here. Additionally, I just want to remind everyone to thank Shu Hong for his presentation today. To reiterate, it was amazing to hear about his journey, his achievements, and so far, and take to heart everything that he has told you. We're truly blessed to have him as our speaker today, and I want to thank everyone again for coming. Don't miss the closing ceremony at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and we hope that everyone here has a wonderful rest of your day.
Welcome everyone to the commemoration ceremony, our final event for the 2021 Inspiring Role Model Virtual Conference. My name is Angela, and Jessica and I are back to close off the conference. During this closing ceremony, we'll be addressing conference planner recognition awards, networking, and raffle winner announcements. We hope you gain valuable experiences and insight from our speakers this weekend. And we would now like to take this time to recognize the role of ambassadors, partners, and sponsors all around the globe in bringing the Inspiring Role Models Conference to life.
It's crazy to imagine that a few months ago, this conference was just an idea. When we first pitched this idea to our youth committee on January 3rd, we were just an ambitious team ready to start the new year with a brand new project. We would have never predicted to have such a huge impact, reaching people from Morocco to India to right here in the United States. This weekend, we hope that you were blown away by our incredible stories shared by our speakers, just as we were.
Our gratitude towards everyone's effort to build this conference is beyond measure. Hence, in addition to building professional role models to the spotlight, we would like to give our diligent promoters, planners, and funders a chance in the limelight as well. This phenomenal team altruistically devotes time to support today's youth and invest in a brighter future. Their passion and dedication are nothing short of extraordinary and deserve our praise.
We would also like to go beyond the acknowledgement of our partners and ambassadors as a whole. In order to accredit the incredible work of ambassadors and partners that went well beyond the expectations, we will be hosting an award ceremony. These assiduous team members will be receiving recognition awards as a special thank you for their spectacular impact on the conference.
Not only does our team deserve appreciation, but our audience does as well. Thus, the ceremony will also encompass the announcement of our raffle winners.
Now, we wanted to give a quick recap for all the events we've had the joy of organizing this weekend. We started off the day on Saturday with an opening ceremony speech from Matt Scott. He reminded us to discover our personal stories and find our real-world superpowers through his powerful anecdotes. Through his talk, we realized how big of an impact we make by sharing our stories.
Our second event on Saturday was Personal Branding and Public Speaking for Students by Stephanie Su. Our moderators for this event were Gayla Turamani and Riso Wazuz. During the workshop, Stephanie shared her tips and advice as an avid public speaker and debater, as well as her journey to building her personal brand through LinkedIn. She also shared tips for how you can start to build your personal brand to find new opportunities like jobs, speaking engagements, and just making new connections. Thank you to Stephanie, Gayla, and Wiesel for leading such an insightful workshop.
After the workshop at 2 p.m. Eastern or 11 a.m. Pacific time, our guest speaker, Naomi Porter, led Entrepreneurship, It's Never Too Young to Start, where she explained all of the steps to starting your own business, from developing an entrepreneurial website, building a business plan, pitching your idea, building a network, marketing, and funding, and she even shared some ways to get involved in her own nonprofit for entrepreneurial education, entrepreneurship. If you're interested in working with her team or getting free funding for your own personal project, we would definitely recommend checking out her website. Thank you, Naomi, and her moderator, Anne, for an amazing presentation.
The fourth event of the day was Army Armstead's talk, Liberation and Technology, which was moderated by Sarah Sarash. Army shared his stories, takeaways, and advice that led him to become the executive director of Emergent Works. Hearing his journey from being a mentee to a program manager to the top executive in a company is truly inspiring, and we hope his talk inspired you to learn more about programming and technology. A huge thank you to Army and Sarah for both of their work.
The final event on Saturday was led by guest speaker Danielle Boyer and moderated by Neil Shun, who is the editor-in-chief of Hope Humanities. Danielle shared her amazing impact as an advocate and robotics inventor. She even showed us some of her own robot creations and the projects she's been working on with her award-winning nonprofit, STEAM Connections. Thank you to Danielle and Neil for leading this amazing presentation to conclude the first day of the conference.
We started today with Delara Sumble's workshop, The Business of Being a Writer. This event was hosted by Grace Yang, who is a graduating senior at Michigan Youth Empowerment and interested in writing as well. Delara shared her tips as a published writer on how to advance your writing skills, whether it's for writing your own novel, short story, an essay for school, or your personal statement for college. Writing is such an important skill to have, so thank you so much to Delara and Grace for holding this incredibly helpful workshop.
After Delara at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific Time, Eden Fulgo gave her talk, Solar, Software, and Robots, An Unexpected STEM Journey, with the help of her two co-moderators, Teresa Lee and Troy Shin. Teresa and Troy are actually both members of Michigan Youth Empowerment. It was so amazing to hear Eden's impacts in the STEAM field, from turning her high school science fair project into an award-winning nonprofit organization, and now leading a 17-person team at her tech startup, Mobot.
Finally, our last speaker of the day and the conference was Shuhan Zhang. Shuhan's talk was titled Unpassioned Education in the Arts and was moderated by MYE member Harold Wu. Shuhan started playing piano at 9 years old and in 2018 became a Long Foundation Young Scholar. Sharing his journey really serves as a reminder as to how important passion is, no matter what you choose as your career. Thank you so much to Shuhan and Harold for ending the conference on such a high note. Now, we shared a lot of information, and I'm sure that many of you want to continue to reach out and even ask questions or just learn more about their work. So this slide contains their websites as well as their contact information, and we'll stay on this slide for a couple seconds so that you guys can take a screenshot or take a picture.
All right. This has been such an amazing 2 days filled with such inspiring speakers. However, we hope that the Inspiring Role Models Conference experience lasts more than a weekend. As one of our goals, we want to provide you with the resources to further your passions as well as build connections with other attendees. Feel free to use the LinkedIn group chat to stay connected with other attendees. During the opening ceremony, we shared an invite link for you all to join, but if you haven't gotten the chance to do so, it's not too late. Use the link bit.ly/IRM-group to join, which is also displayed on the screen.
If you're having trouble joining, Jessica and I will also be dropping our LinkedIn's in the chat. So feel free to connect with us and we'll add you. Just give me 1 second and we'll copy those links in. Here's mine, and then Jessica, feel free to put yours in the chat as well. But yeah, just feel free to connect with us and we'll add you to the GroupMe while everyone is joining. I know a few of you may not have LinkedIn accounts, which is totally okay. Not many students do. However, we highly recommend creating one, especially after hearing Stephanie Sue's personal branding workshop on Saturday. LinkedIn is such a great place to meet like-minded people with similar interests and career goals, and joining our IRM group chat on LinkedIn is a great place to start. I also just wanted to take this moment to reflect on this amazing conference experience. Jessica, what has been your favorite moment from this weekend?
I would say my favorite part was seeing the entire conference come to life. Our team definitely faced challenges during the planning stage of this event, like finding the perfect speaker lineup and recruiting ambassadors and partners who are just as passionate about this event as we are. But seeing all of our work pay off today and yesterday was just beyond gratifying. I'm so proud of all of our amazing speakers and all of the stories that they were able to bring to this stage, and the diligent ambassadors as well as partners that helped this conference reach hundreds of communities. I can't forget to mention that I learned lots of valuable lessons as well. What was your favorite part?
My favorite part was probably just hearing the background stories from all of our incredible speakers. When I see someone that I look up to, it's often easy to forget that they had to face challenges and obstacles as well. But from this weekend, hearing how, for example, Stephanie grew a personal brand and Naomi started her own business, how Army, Danielle, and Eden all ran their own organizations, to Delara and Shuhan sharing tips and advice about writing and music and passion, and so many more stories from our speakers, as well as hearing the challenges that they faced. It really inspired me and hopefully all of our attendees to go out and do something, because we all start somewhere.
I completely agree. Throughout the conference, we also asked our audience to give us feedback on their favorite experiences. Here are some of our favorite responses. One attendee shared, "I love how passionate Army was when he talked about what he does every day. It's so easy to tell when someone truly loves their career, and through this talk, I could really see how much Army loves working with emergent works. I'm super interested in technology, and I hope that I can find a way to use it to help other people as well."
Yeah, I completely agree. Here's another one of the responses and the feedback from that I loved. This one says, I was so impressed with the demo that Eden gave for our startup robot. I use so many apps every day, but I never thought about the process that companies went through to produce and test the app. I think her talk was the perfect balance between being technical, but also explaining all of her projects in a way that someone who doesn't have that much experience in software engineering can still understand.
That attendee sounds like they had an amazing time. I'm so glad they were able to take away so much from Eden's talk. Another attendee said, "It was so amazing to hear about the timeline and things that all the speakers did along the way to get where they are today. I'm not sure what I want to study yet, so it's reassuring to see that not everyone knew exactly what they wanted to do right away. They tried different things, explored different career paths until they found what they were most passionate about doing." Okay. So before we transition away from this topic, we want to give all of our attendees one more chance to share your opinions and experiences at the conference. On the screen, which Angela is sharing right now, we have an activity for you all. Go ahead and visit www.mentee.com and enter the code 4280-0301 to vote for your favorite part of the conference. We've also posted the link in the chat for you to take part in this activity. All right, so the website and code are also listed on the top of the screen at the moment. Our options for this raffle, for this question are hearing success stories, hearing challenges and hardships, raffle, getting and applying advice, collaborating with other attendees, and other. If you chose other, feel free to share what your favorite part was in the chat. We will give everyone a few moments to respond. So while we're waiting for responses, Angela and I will give our own input on this question. I think that my favorite part of the conference has to be getting and applying advice. These speakers have given me so much insight, and I can't wait to apply what I've learned in the future. Their words of passion have truly inspired me to take action on my dreams. What do you think, Angela?
I think I would probably have to say collaborating with others. Organizing this conference with our team has really taught me how important it is to work with other people. And that's why my favorite part about the conference has just been being able to meet all of you guys through Zoom and YouTube, even if it is virtual. I truly hope that all of our attendees can stay in touch in the future and continue to support each other. So let's take a look at what our audience said. It looks like right now the two choices that our audience chose the most was hearing success stories and hearing challenges and hardships. And then we also have a few people that said raffle and then getting and applying advice. Okay, so now let me go on to the next screen. So this is our second poll for you guys. The question this time is, what do you think is the most important trait an inspiring role model should have? And our answer choices this time are perseverance, passion, leadership, patience, creativity, courage, and other. Once again, if you did choose other, feel free to type it in the chat what your answer is, and then we'll give everyone another few moments to respond. So a ton of different responses. Awesome. And then I also just wanted to share what I would probably choose. I think I'd probably say passion. I just really loved hearing all of our speakers share their careers, and it's so easy to tell when someone is excited and passionate about what they do every day. This is such a cheesy quote, but I really love it. So I just wanted to share this as well because I think it's related. But it says, love what you do and do what you love.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that passion is the catalyst for all of these other characteristics displayed on the screen. Without the heart to do something, it will never be completed to the best of its potential. I also feel like the key to inspiring others is being inspired yourself, which I believe is best accomplished through having passion in what you do. Based on our mentee responses, a lot of our attendees agree with us, and they think that inspiring role models should be passionate.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for participating in that super quick poll activity. Okay, it was so great to hear all of your amazing feedback from the conference, but we couldn't have done it alone. We want to give another huge thank you to our ambassadors and partner organizations. So at this time, we want to transition into our recognition awards. We'll start by presenting recognition awards to 6 ambassadors that went above and beyond with all of their work. This award is given to ambassadors who truly represent the ideals of this conference. Their collaboration, enthusiasm, and continuous dedication have inspired our entire team. To thank them for their contributions, our 6 ambassador awardees will all be receiving $20 Amazon gift cards. In no particular order, we are excited and honored to present the Ambassador Recognition Awards to the following individuals. First, we have Lewis Lee from Florida. Lewis is always one of the first people to complete his assignments and is always reaching out to clarify or confirm something. And we are so lucky to have him on our ambassador team. Next, we have Leah Samakis, who is from Michigan. Leah is always eager to do her assignment. She's always contacting us with new promotion ideas, and we are so lucky to have her on the ambassador team, and she played such a huge role in all of our promotional strategies for this conference. Third, we have Rakesh Kumar from New Jersey. Rakesh actually joined our ambassador team a lot later than most of our ambassadors, but he went above and beyond to make up for that time. He reached out to so many people through email, LinkedIn messages, and really spent so much time to help us get the word out about this conference. Now, the next two ambassadors receiving the award, I actually wanted to present together. I'm excited to award these recognition awards to Wiso Wazus from Morocco and Gela Turamani from Albania. So Wiso and Gela were both ambassadors as well as the co-moderators for Stephanie Su's workshop. And Morocco and Albania are actually about several hours ahead, but both Wiso and Gela stayed up so late to attend ambassador meetings as well as moderator rehearsals. And it is just such a privilege to work with such dedicated and hardworking people. And then finally, last but not least, is Sarah Suresh from California. Sarah has been one of our most dedicated ambassadors, and she was also the moderator for Ari Armstead's talk on Saturday. Sarah is always on task and willing to do more than she is asked, and I feel so lucky to have her on the ambassador team. Congratulations to these 6 individuals. All of you will receive an email in the following week with their certificates and directions to claim your gift card. Apart from these 6 ambassadors, we also just want to thank our entire IRM ambassador team. Each and every one of you played a role in the success of this conference, and it was our honor to work with all of you. All ambassadors can expect an email, as well as this email will include your completion and volunteer hour certificates, so look out for that in the following week.
Yeah, and in addition to the efforts of our ambassadors, our partners have spent copious time and effort to help this conference reach heights beyond what we could have ever imagined. The Partner Recognition Award is given to 3 partners who expressed true diligence during our conference planning season, were an active teammate, and helped spread the conference to youth all around the globe. These partners truly represented the defining elements of our conference: inspire, collaborate, and innovate. With that said, let me introduce our 3 awardees. Our first awardee is Hope Humanities. Hope is an independent, student-run online journal that creates opportunities for high school students around the world to publish their outstanding works in the humanities. These include creative writing, such as poetry and prose, research papers, editorial reviews, and visual arts. Hope Humanities brought numerous ideas to the table during the beginning state of the conference and successfully initiated the Ambassador Feedback Program, which allowed us to gain even more insight on this event. Our next awardee is Astudia. Astudia is an online platform started by teens for teens. Their goal is to make your life easier by giving you tips and tricks to improve your lifestyle, physical and mental health, and more. Astudia offers time management and study help, scholarship and internship opportunities, online services and events, and much more. Astudia diligently recruited a significant portion of our ambassador population and actively maintained communication with us. Lastly, but certainly not least, The Outlet is our final awardee. The Outlet is a website where young adults can express their creativity and inspire others through original writing and music. The Outlet resolutely promoted the conference on social media. Congratulations to our recognition award recipients. You will all receive certifications after the conference. Additionally, we also just wanted to give another huge thank you to every single one of our partners, ambassadors, and sponsors, including Extreme V and Sensata Technologies.
Now, what for all of you have been waiting for, we are excited to announce the 9 winners of our raffle giveaways. So each session, we've been having our guest speakers help us randomly select a lucky winner to receive a free pair of JBL headphones. All winners must type in either the Zoom chat or the YouTube live chat confirmed to claim your prize. So if we don't see your response in the chat, then the prize will go to the next person on our raffle entries list. So yeah, let's go ahead and announce our winners.
All right, so for our opening ceremony giveaway, our winner is Henshin from Miami, Florida, USA. Congrats to Henshin. Once again, please type in the chat to claim your prize.
Okay, while we're waiting for Henshin to type in the chat, we'll move on to the prize for the second event. So this was personal branding and public speaking hosted by Stephanie Su. And the prize is going to Lewin from Troy, Michigan, United States. Once again, please type in the chat to claim your prize.
All right, so our third event of day one was Naomi Porter's entrepreneurship workshop, Entrepreneurship, It's Never Too Young to Start. The winner for this event is Holly from Pleasanton, Florida. Go ahead and type in the chat.
Okay, and then I will move on to announcing the winner for Army Armstead's talk, Liberation and Technology. The winner of this raffle is Lily from Saline, Michigan.
Okay, so our last winner of day one is from Danielle Boyer's event, Tech for Social Change. Congratulations to Justin from Novi, Michigan for winning this raffle event.
Okay, and then next is for day two, our first event was Delara Samble's workshop, The Business of Being a Writer. And the raffle prize for this event will go to Olivia, all the way from Nice, France.
All right, and our next winner is from Eden Fulgo's seminar, Solar Software and Robots, An Unexpected STEM Journey. This prize was won by Kong Ling from Rochester, Michigan.
And then last but not least, congratulations to Asha from Livermore, California for being the lucky winner for Shuhan Zhang's talk on passion, education, and the arts. And then...
All right. And then finally, the last pair of JBL headphones is a VIP exclusive giveaway. And the winner is Charlisa from Michigan. So we're just going to give everyone a few more moments to type in the chat to claim your prize.
Okay, I'm just gonna re-announce some of the names that have yet to type in the chat. Let me see. So I think we're waiting on, do we have a Justin from Novi with us today? And then I think that's it. Everyone else has confirmed. Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong.
Do we have an Asha from Livermore, California?
Oh yeah, I saw Asha's confirmation in the YouTube.
All right, and then do we have Charlisa?
Yep, looks like, yeah, Charlisa confirmed on Zoom.
Sounds perfect. All right, so then we are just waiting for Justin.
Okay, 10 more seconds, or we're gonna move on to our runner-up.
All right, so our runner-up for Danielle Poyet's event is Albert Mutumba from Katama, Namibia. So go ahead and take a few moments to type in the chat to claim your prize.
Just wait like a few more seconds because I know the YouTube live stream is a bit delayed. Okay, last call for Albert. If not, we'll move on to our other backup. Okay, it looks like Albert is not with us. Then we'll move on to our next runner-up. So the winner for, what are we on? Danielle Boyer's event will go to Ankit, all the way from, sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Bhagalpur, India. I'm very sorry, but yeah, Ankit from India.
Once again, we'll give a few moments because the YouTube live stream is a bit delayed.
And then while we're waiting, so all of the winners, you guys will be receiving an email where we'll contact you. We'll contact you with the directions to claim your raffle prize.
Yep, and just to review our winners so far, we have Henshin, Luann, Holly, Lily, Olivia, Conling, and Asha and Charlisa.
Okay, and then Ankit just confirmed. So yeah, Ankit was our last winner.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so congratulations to all of the winners for our 9 raffle giveaways. Look out for an email from us shortly with the directions to officially claim your prize.
We also just wanted to give a huge thank you to our team at MYE. Over the course of the past 8 months, every single one of you have worked so hard to make this conference a reality. From reaching out to guest speakers, putting together the conference schedule, building the conference website, and so much more. You all have been amazing team members. Thank you so much to Teresa, Kevin Yang, Troy, Harold, Grace Wang, Ryan, Matthew, Kevin Kong, and Grace Sang. And of course, a huge thank you to Grace Kai, the Executive Director of Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation. She has been such an amazing mentor throughout this entire process.
Each of our team members had a unique experience during the conference planning season, and we would like to give our audience just a glimpse of their perspectives. So before the conference, we asked our team a few questions and compiled the responses to share with all of you. So our first question that we asked was, what was your favorite part about planning the conference?
One of our team members responded, personally, my favorite part of planning IRM was being able to work together with the entire MYE team toward a common goal. Though we usually work together on a regular basis, publishing articles, holding meetings, etc., this conference gave each person a part that needed to be fulfilled. Moreover, this conference brought a sense of urgency to our meetings and allowed us to accomplish much more.
Another one of our members stated, my favorite part about planning IRM is being able to work as a team to pull such wonderful presenters and speakers. In addition, being able to create the content we wanted to share to the world and designing the flyers for the event. So the next question that we asked was, what was our team's biggest takeaways from planning this event?
So a fellow team member answered, I think one takeaway that I have from planning this event is that this really was a team effort. Everyone must do their part in order to achieve success. Sometimes when I see other people working hard, I am inspired to do more. This experience made me further understand the importance of teamwork. The last question we asked our team pertained to our biggest motivation for this conference. Why are inspiring role models important?
Okay, so a team member said inspiring role models are important because they set an example for the next generation. Without someone to look up towards, I believe that many students will be confused as to the path they want to take in the future. And moreover, they can inspire new ideas by showing how they came up with their own.
Another committee member thoughtfully concluded, I think they are important because they allow us to see those who have followed similar paths that we have, and we can learn from them. We get to see how their steps differ from ours. Seeing the backstories of our role models will allow us to adjust our own course and succeed in our goals.
Yeah, and I think a common theme throughout all of our team's responses is the significance and outcome of teamwork. Like our keynote speaker, Matt Scott, mentioned in the opening ceremony, the world can be a tough place and you can't do it alone. Putting this conference together was a lot of work, but we were so lucky to have an amazing team and support system. And also, once again, just a huge thank you to our mentors, Grace and also Helen, for helping us and guiding our team along the way. So I really hope that hearing our team's feedback gave you all some insight into event planning and organization. And with that said, we also just wanted to share and celebrate some accomplishments of our team at Michigan Youth Empowerment Foundation with the following short video clip. Shout out to Harold from our team for putting this video together. If you're interested in participating in more of our events similar to the Inspiring Role Models Conference, we have a few resources on our screen. So you can check out our website blog, which is myebeat.com. And this is a platform for our students to publish their own articles. So we publish bi-weekly articles in 7 categories: eats, arts, giggles, media, self-care, STEM, and study. We also offer a virtual STEAM, business, finance, and public speaking class for students grades K through 12. So you can check out our website to enroll. And finally, you can also subscribe to our newsletter at bit.ly/ NYE-news to be the first to know about new volunteer opportunities, events, and general updates. And that is also listed on the screen, so make sure to write that down.
Yeah, and we also host seminars over Zoom. So our most recent seminar, How to Stand Out to Colleges, features 3 of our graduating seniors this year sharing their tips that they used throughout high school that got them into Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and University of Michigan. If you want to watch the webinar recording, you can visit bit.ly/MYE-CA 2021, which is also on the screen. So feel free to screenshot this slide as well so you can save it for the future, and we will give everyone a moment to do so.
Yeah, and then while you guys are saving that, if you are on YouTube, NYE's YouTube channel also has a lot of our past recordings from similar webinar events. So feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all of those recordings from past seminars. So as we near the end of the conference, we just wanted to look back at this entire planning period. The past 8 months have been some of the most crazy, stressful, but rewarding experiences ever. And I honestly cannot believe that it's almost over. Looking back, what was your biggest takeaway that you've had from this conference?
I would say never underestimate your limits. I know it sounds cheesy, but as a student-led youth committee with less than 20 members, we have never undertaken such a project. And I would be lying if I said we weren't overwhelmed in some situations. However, the most significant part of it all is that we didn't give up on ourselves and we didn't cap off our potential.
Yeah, I completely agree. There were definitely times that I felt discouraged, but I'm so glad that I had this amazing team with me to go through planning this conference. I think one of my favorite parts of planning was just all of the small victories that we shared as a team along the way. I remember every time we confirmed a guest speaker or hit a milestone for registrations, I would be so happy. It's just so fulfilling to see something you put so much time and energy into as a team succeed. It was amazing just to be able to work with a team that is equally as passionate about impacting others as I am. And we hope that all of you guys leave this conference inspired and meeting someone who is passionate about the same issues or has the same interests that you do. Now, before we end this conference, I actually wanted to revisit our opening keynote from Saturday with Matt Scott. Toward the end of Matt's talk, he asked all of us to think about what our story is as we listen to all of our speakers throughout the conference. From listening to the stories of our 8 inspiring guest speakers, I hope all of you can take away that every single one of us has a story to share. And while you might not be as experienced of a speaker as our guests, I know I'm definitely not, we all start somewhere. Through this conference, Jessica and I and the rest of the IRM planning team want you to know that your story is valuable and worth sharing. And at the risk of sounding too cheesy, each and every one of you has the potential to be an inspiring role model.
I couldn't agree more. We all start somewhere. I once heard a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." I feel like this quote really emphasizes that each and every one of us is capable of driving our passions and goals to impact the world and leave our mark in the future. And the catalyst to making it all happen is belief. Matt's words do an incredible job at allowing us to understand that not only should we be recognizing the stories of these incredible role models, but we should also make an effort to discover our own. Understanding our own stories and superpowers, as Matt Scott put it, give us the empowerment to continue to be awesome and make a difference. Thank you all for attending the Inspiring Role Models Virtual Conference this weekend. This conference would not have been possible without you, and we hope you leave learning something new about yourself. We hope you feel empowered and, of course, inspired.
Jessica and I were honored to be your host this weekend. And once again, thank you so much to each and every one of you. We hope you enjoyed spending time with us during this conference. And finally, we just hope that all of you have an amazing rest of your day.